The scene of the events is the capital of the Howard Empire. According to the local calendar, the events take place in 3589. The city is gripped by chaos everywhere. Terrible explosions, fire, destruction, and complete anarchy accompanied by terrible screams of people. A local nobleman kidnapped the dragon's only son, Generok, and for such a grave sin, the dragon will wipe out the entire Howard Empire. The dragon, blind in its anger, does not care whom it takes revenge on, and ordinary people will pay for the feudal lord's guilt with their lives in the best traditions. Like any parent, the dragon Generok is ready to tear throats for his child, so in complete despair, the dragon destroys everything in his path. People who had nothing to do with the tragedy in the Generok's house are looking at the angry winged reptile drowning in grief, in fear. Generok cries bloody tears in despair, not understanding how these people dared to take away his dearest little son, Royce's happiness. And only the destruction of tens, of hundreds of insignificant human souls who know nothing but greed for other people's property can become repentance for this grave sin. Blinded by grief from the loss of his only child, the dragon Generok burned half of the Howard Empire to the ground in revenge, and from that moment the story began. And somehow, this child was reborn as someone whose time in the world of ordinary people, in the stone jungle of a modern city, ended very tragically. Before he was reborn as the son of a dragon, the unfortunate man from his past life was seriously ill and bedridden, with no hope of any improvement. For this unfortunate man, there was nothing better than to find himself in the body of a dragon, which is a symbol of health and longevity, but a fly in the ointment. The little prince stood there thinking his thoughts until someone's hand slapped him on the shoulder, preventing him from enjoying the solitude and silence. A little girl of Royce's age asks him with a smile what he is thinking about. And her twin brother, identical to her sister as two peas in a pod, teasingly asks if he is planning to do something naughty again, but this time, Royce will not be naughty. Now, the young dragon boy turns to the red-haired hero Favreau and asks if the giant of the mountain they have been talking about so much will be here. The red-haired hero replies that there can be no doubt about it, as the wandering giant has been seen many times in the vicinity of mountain slopes and villages. Eyewitnesses describe the giant as a creature as majestic as a stout mountain, whose body is made entirely of stones, so they try to avoid contact. The red-haired Viking replies that the giant is usually asleep, and his character is not as bad as described, and he will not attack first unless you provoke him. Suddenly, this handsome boy with silver hair looks like a red-haired Viking coming down, and, with his hand over his mouth, tells him not to cause him any trouble. The boy can only pray that everything goes according to plan, and that their trip does not turn into another adventure that can really spoil the nerves of both of them. As if to spite the fact that you want everything to go peacefully under the wheels of your carriage, you take a stone and let it go down the drain. It would have bounced off their carriage, but not this time, and the damned pebble jumps along the road like a flea in a frying pan. This damn pebble did something comparable to the end of the world and hit a huge boulder, causing it to sway, undermining the balance. One well-aimed blow right at the base of the boulder was enough to destroy what was already holding on by a thread, and now we can only hope for a miracle. For the young dragon, this is also a bad sign, and he can only watch the damn boulder flying rapidly downward. The boulder falls down to the bottom of the canyon, causing faults in the age-old rocky landscape. As if that weren't enough to make him happy, a strong explosion from such a sharp blow added to the fracture in the rocks of the canyon where the giant was sleeping. Watching everything that happens, the dragon turns to Favreau to inform his partner about something inevitable and terrible. Turning to his red-haired Viking partner, the young nobleman tells Favreau with a grim, nervous smile that they are up to their ears in selective shit. The giant has woken up and is rightfully chasing them to kick the ass of the bastards who have disturbed his centuries-old peace in the snowy lands. The dragon prince admits that although this life is interesting and richer than his previous one, death follows him here and constantly breathes down his neck. The whole salt is in the plot of this manhwa, the concept of which is built so that the dragon goes beyond the line as quickly as possible. He is clearly not trying very hard. It's ridiculous. The mountain giant is rightly annoyed that the travelers woke them up and are rushing at them at the speed of light, intending to kick their asses. If Favreau hadn't reacted quickly, they would have remained only a stencil on a mountain landscape. I see the target, I see no obstacles, and the young prince, using Favreau's head as a kind of improvised scaffolding, steps forward directly onto the battlefield. Without waiting for anything, the young prince uses the magic of time and slows down the target, and his alter ego from the real world is not going to just die. The mysterious magic covers a very dangerous boulder, and it has slowed down a bit in its flight. The devilish threat to the life of the monarch and others crashes into the ground with a thud when it is finally extinguished by the magic of the Dragon Prince. The grand entrance to the stage and this damned cobblestone were chopped to pieces by the same sword twins with their quick reaction to everything around them. Sitting astride the unfortunate Favreau as if he were a mare, the Dragon Prince commands him to escape as quickly as possible, and the crying Viking says that he is trying. The young prince promises to survive and to realize his dreams and live the way he could not in his past sick life. Let's go back to our dragon of a man, Generok, who is furious because his most precious possessions were stolen by people who were supposed to be quartered. The dragon is attacked by a large army of heroes, led by a red-haired knight who is ready to go forward without leaving a head on the dragon. The red-haired man urges Generok to get ready because today he will personally put an end to all the dragon sieges on the Howard Empire. Generok rightly considers them to be miserable insects who always get in where they don't belong and have no sense of honor or compassion. Even if he powdered half or even the entire Howard Empire, it would not be enough to repay the death of his little child. Generok rightly wants to tear the entire population of the empire to pieces and wipe out those who have attempted to violate the sacred. The dragon will do everything to destroy the part of the empire that still survives. This is the end of the reading of the last chapter of this primitive child's manhwa for the patient. This manga is a kind of children's comic book in the fantasy genre that a terminally ill young man finally gets carried away with. In the exhausted black eyes, this picture shines brightly, so much so that it contrasts with the exhausted eyes and face of the man. I saw a vivid picture of a typical children's fantasy with knights and dragons, and honor and revenge and magic with mysteries and plots. The bedridden young man looks so exhausted that at first glance it seems that he could give his soul to God. His diagnosis of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or Lou Gehrig's disease, was the misfortune that confined a very young, promising man to bed. This disease causes complete atrophy and death of the neural cells responsible for the movement of the whole body, which leads to paralysis of the whole body and death. The young man learned of his diagnosis at the age of 25, and it became a death sentence for him and the end of his entire life. He had no relatives or family of his own, and all the money he saved went to keep him alive in his body or to exist, because you can't call that life. He had a strong, beautiful body, and now all he has left is his thin, lifeless body, the shell of which is supported by ventilators. And this simple children's manhwa with its bright, naive plot was the only thing that somehow made his life more interesting in the last days of his life. This became the only thing that made up his broken personality. The faint glint of a computer screen in the patient's eyes is the only glint in the eyes that can appear in the eyes of a terminally ill person who is doomed. The heartbeat is unstable, and when it fails, the young man's heart fails, and the machine starts to go crazy, calling a specialist. Looking at the screen for the last time, showing his last moments of heartbeat, the young man simply exhales, losing his life. The eyes close, blurring, which means that the patient's life is about to end. And in the last moments, the young man regrets that he never got to know the ending of the manhwa. The specialist immediately runs to the dying patient, but in vain, because life has already left this body and the patient has suffered and everything is over for him. He was not going to die so easily, so when he opened his eyes again, he was surprised to see neither a doctor nor death with a scythe, but a handsome aristocrat. The reborn man is amazed at what he sees, and when he sees the face of the one who looks at him with genuine love, he falls into a complete stupor. A happy, surprisingly handsome aristocrat picks up the dragon and laughs at him, happy that his child has opened his eyes and woken up. Here is a picture of a man who died in the hospital a few minutes ago, and the little dragon is completely bewildered by this phenomenon. It looks like some kind of a stupid prank or delirium or something similar to a state of clinical death when the still living consciousness hallucinates from the release of hormones. Like any child, the dragon could only throw a tantrum and scream, but no one knew what he was screaming because they didn't know what the hell was going on. The honest reaction to all this was to scream like a madman at the top of your lungs, expressing that you did not understand what the hell was going on. He became a dragon and now looks at his new body in the mirror. White flesh, purple horns, ears and violet eyes, sharp teeth and wings. What a handsome man. It is fair to say that the reborn man thought that he had simply lost his common sense and went through a rejection of reality and an unwillingness to accept himself. He went through the process of realizing the whole situation and trying to understand what was happening to him and how it was possible for him to do this. But after analyzing this whole situation, he came to understand and rejoiced in the fact that he was reborn in the body of a dragon. A real dragon. A strong one. In numerous manhwa and comics, dragons have never been weak creatures, and he can't complain about being reborn into the strongest creature in fantasy. And the most important thing is that the average life expectancy of a dragon is about 10,000 years compared to other creatures such as humans and fairies. In his past life, he worked hard from an early age to survive, and later he fell ill with an incurable disease that paralyzed his body and destroyed his spirit. And in the end, to die in the prime of life very young and leave absolutely nothing behind. But in this life, everything will be fine because being reborn as a dragon with an absolute reserve of vital energy and long years of life is a real victory. Still, he hasn't gotten used to the strange sounds his new body makes instead of the usual words. However, in this body, he is not afraid of any difficulties and will overcome them with ease because he is now a dragon. Warm, fatherly hands gently take Royce's small, chubby body and raise it to the level of his eyes. With love and warmth, the father looks at his child and asks what made him so happy. Clutching the baby to his chest, the handsome aristocrat says, "It's time for little Royce to have lunch." The dining room is elegantly decorated with sapphire gilded walls and tall candlesticks. He is definitely a nobleman, a dragon nobleman. You only get lucky like this once in a millennium. And a little white frowning dragon waiting for his meal in a lovely bib, decorated with lace and an embroidered dragon's face. On the plate in front of him, some incomprehensible red jelly-like mass looks very unappetizing to the little dragon child. The dragon father, Generok, does not scold his son for refusing to eat, but asks why he does not like it, and asks the little boy to eat his food as soon as possible. He will definitely not get used to such strange food, thinks a grown man in the body of a small dragon, looking at the strawberry jelly in front of him on the plate. Royce begins to eat this red jelly because since he is a dragon, he must live like a real dragon. So the dragon begins to eat the jelly without being naughty, tasting it to see if it is edible or not. Eventually, the baby likes the food and tastes like strawberries in the real world, and Royce notes that it is quite good for something that looks like slugs. That's why the little dragon eats the strawberry jelly on both cheeks with great pleasure. The dragon looks up at the person staring at him as if he saw a deity in front of him. The father can't get enough of his son and tells him that if he wants more food, he should just ask for it and that they have plenty of food. The look on Royce's face is frightening. Having eaten enough, Royce tells his father that he is no longer hungry. The fact that his son called him father so coldly and simply takes a stab in the heart of Generok. He is ready to cry because his son calls him father for short, as the offended father, Generok, wanted. Generok keeps telling Royce to call him daddy and papa, literally saying the words syllabically for his son to understand them better. But the child looks at him as some kind of idiot who has nothing to do, and fatherhood finally melts all the remnants of the brain in his skull. Generok continues to be amused when he thinks about how a dragon can so easily call someone daddy and consider himself a daddy instead of a father. If you think about it, Royce doesn't even know his father's name, and it's a bit stressful for him now. In the end, little Royce gathers up the courage to ask his father what his name is, and this brings Generok to tears. After calming down, the still shocked Generok asks if his son really became interested in this only a month later, and all the time, he acted as if he didn't care. Jokes are jokes, tantrums are tantrums, and the dragon has revealed his true name, and his name is Generok, which surprises little Royce. Hearing his father's name, the dragon falls into a stupor because he remembers Generok from his past life as a cruel dragon who destroyed the Howard Empire. He understood everything and remembered that in the comic book, Royce's dragon dad was called General, who intended to wipe the entire Howard Empire into the dust. The realization of this makes your eyes glaze over because you are sitting in front of someone who destroyed the empire in the manuscript you read as a child. Without hesitating for too long, Royce jumps out of his chair with a thud because he is in a furious stupor. Royce gets up from the table, which surprised his father, who did not understand why his son got up so abruptly and ran away from him. The father was about to ask his son something when he jumped up and ran to the door, pressing his back against it as if it were a yogi's escape from death. Breaking into a run, Royce tells Generok that he is full and doesn't want to eat anymore, so he hurriedly runs away from the table, followed by Generok's eyes. Rushing headlong through the corridors of the palace, Royce cannot believe what is happening to him and intends to find out what it is. Finally, the little creature reaches the library and opens the door, all out of breath from running through the corridors. The library in his native palace is a huge room with numerous shelves and an unlimited number of books on them. After counting crows for a long time, Royce takes the book he needs from the shelf to read as much as he can about his father and the Empire. Sitting comfortably on a pile of books, Royce begins to read a book that should tell him everything about his own father and the Howard Empire. Finally, the little creature comes across the information he was looking for and looks at the page with genuine curiosity in his eyes. Before his eyes, a page appears with a map of the Howard Empire and information about the same empire he read about in a manhwa in his past life. The man realized that he had not been reborn as a dragon, and he was also madly in love with the manhwa he had been reading for the rest of his life. Therefore, the little dragon, with the consciousness of an adult man, hangs out in thought about what the hell is going on and what it means. Having racked his brain, Royce cannot understand what is going on here when he is pulled out of his thoughts by the voice of Generok, who has come to his son. Like a real father, he brought a plate of fruit again and asked his son how he was feeling, and if he was in pain. Something does not fit in Royce's head, namely how such a kind, gentle, and caring father like Generok could turn into a monster. He remembers him as a fierce dragon who swore to destroy all of humanity and wonders what had to happen for his father to become a cruel murderer. He wonders what happened until he remembers that people took the life of his newborn son and now promises to destroy everyone and drown the world in blood. Royce had an epiphany when he remembered that Generok had gone insane after losing his son, and the puzzle began to quietly come together. And then it means one very unpleasant thing for Royce, which breaks the logic of the whole situation. A son asks his father if he has an older brother and is told that he is his father's only son. Without losing hope, the kids ask Generok if he is planning any more children to make sure that he will not be the victim of an evil fate. Generok says that he and his mother decided that they would have only one child, in their case, a son, whom they would give the best upbringing possible. There are no older brothers and no new children planned, so to Royce's great regret, he will be the unfortunate lost baby. It's not the most pleasant thing you want to realize when you're just born, so his hysterical reaction is quite obvious. The unfortunate man fell into a stupor, and now his world and his idea of fate are shattered. In that manhwa, Generok loses his son and starts a war because he has lost his mind over the death of his only son at the hands of people. What does it mean that Royce is only a catalyst for the outbreak of military conflict on the continent and a slain child of the dragon who will not even appear in the plot? And this unfortunate man became a dragon that was written to die with a pitchfork, i.e., a terminally ill dragon. How paradoxical this nonsense sounds. Who else but the little dragon is climbing around the palace again, and this time he's heading for one of his father's treasure chests, where he keeps all the family's money and relics. Like a real pearl in the middle of the peas, little Royce lies on a pile of gold and sighs sadly, dramatizing his own difficult fate. Melancholy Dragon yawns, complaining that his fate was to die young in his previous life, having done nothing worthwhile in his life. The saddest thing is that he won't even have time to use his rightful riches from the piggy bank. And then why does he need all this gold? Dying again because of some stupid interconnectedness in the system is not a happy prospect for Royce, and he rebels that he is not going to die. And again, the little mischievous creature reaches out to a book lying on a high shelf and read to the holes. Oh yes, the very book chronicling his entire life from start to finish. And now Royce has a new goal to study this book thoroughly to understand it. Now that he has the chronicle in his hands, the little dragon wants to study it to calculate some important calculations and things for himself. Now, the little smart guy has to figure out in what year his father, Generok, went into berserk mode and burned half of the Howard Empire to the ground. Generok's child was killed and he went insane. And if Royce remembers what year it happened and compares the facts, he will know the day of judgment for himself. And the dragon understood. The year described in the manhwa is 3,589, and all the facts converge here. Royce begins a complicated calculation and calculates that in relation to the year 3090 and the day of judgment, he should be destroyed at the age of about 5 centuries. He is to be executed at the age of 498 and 499 years old, 1 year before his majority. The dragon realizes that he will go to the next world as a child and promises that he will give them all a good time, not his death. Now this stubborn little dragon prince promises that he will manage to survive for these 499 years at any cost to himself. He will not give up easily and promises to kick this life's ass. The dining room is again elegant, and it's time for the little dragon to eat. Unlike the last time he talked himself into trying that red jelly, Royce starts eating his blue clear jelly with gusto. Such a great appetite could not go unnoticed by Gennaro as a wonderful father, and he is delighted with the appetite of his son. The little dragon finished the bowl of jelly in one go, and now looks at his father with a suggestion to give him more, and eats with a great appetite for joy. Gennaro is only too happy to do his best, and puts even more jelly on his plate because there is plenty of food, and the child must eat well to grow strong and healthy. Gennaro poured him a full bowl of blue jelly and urged the happy dragon to eat, saying that they had plenty of food and did not need to worry about such things. As if this whole do-or-die festival wasn't enough to make you happy, an insect flies to the smell of sweetness with obviously not good intentions. Royce is eating and does not suspect that his spoon is filled with a kind of bright acidic protein supplement to the sweet berry jelly. The inevitable traumatic experience of being swallowed by an insect was only minutes away. The little dragon was lucky that his father reacted in time and rushed to his son to save him from being poisoned by a brightly colored poisonous arthropod. Gennaro's reaction time is quick, and he automatically knocks the spoon with food out of his son's hands. It is fair to say that when the boy saw his father taking a bowl of food and a spoon from his hands, he started to throw a tantrum, not understanding why his father did this. Holding the damned insect in his hands, Gennaro exhales, saying that they have narrowly escaped a big trouble. The fact is that Gennaro's father bred these insects artificially, and they are safe for dragons like them, but not so much for a small one like Royce. The fact is that these insects contain a deadly poison, which is warned by the bright color of the insect, and little Royce was very scared. Gennaro quickly reassures his son, saying that everything will be fine since he did not eat the insect, so everything will be fine and there is no reason to worry at all. Gennaro looks at the insect with curiosity, wondering if it escaped from his laboratory because of the dragon's own mistake and they narrowly avoided a tragedy. Rice realizes that he has to be more careful next time because he has relaxed too much, and now he has turned off his brain again while walking along the corridors. It is clear that the little dragon prince has finally forgotten what universe he lives in when he calmly walks along the corridors and reads a book on the go. He forgot how the porridge smells at home, how one of his king's knight's eyes lit up red right from the backstage, not promising anything good for Royce. After making sure that they are completely alone in the corridor, the knight swings his axe at the unsuspecting prince, who walks with his back to the entire castle guard. However, Royce's brain was enough to react to the guard's attack, and he was alerted when he heard an excessively loud sound. An axe blade gleamed menacingly in the air, predicting Royce's imminent death by losing his head. It's a good thing that this little idiot had enough brain in his skull to scream when he saw the mortal danger in front of him. Either at the cry of his son, or simply by intuition, Henrik intervenes to break up the whole show and save his son's life. With his bare hands and simple gloves, the father stops the axe blades a millimeter away from decapitating his little boy. Without much fanfare, Gennaro summons a massive dark mass of energy that first engulfs the traitorous knight, enveloping his figure in dark energy. No matter how kind Gennaro was to his son and others to some extent, and having limits is necessary, the dragon burns the traitor alive with hellfire on the spot. Having solved the problem with the traitors, Gennaro immediately rushes to his son, asking if he is all right, but he cannot even answer him. The little dragon does not understand how he almost died twice during this period, while his father wonders how it happened because he checked everything himself. It seems impossible for a sober mind to comprehend, but a few days later, he was finally convinced that it was true. Everything is going well, and it seems that a simple walk in the fresh air with my father will be fine, and nothing terrible should happen a priori. Royce saw a huge mountain with a snowy peak, surrounded by forests, and a huge lake, and a small dragon was amazed by it. Gennaro replies that this mountain is called the Ice Fang of the Earth, and hearing the name of the peak that captured his attention, Royce cannot help but be delighted. It is one of the two most majestic mountains that rise on either side of the continent and is home to many mythical races that live here in harmony. The dragon realizes that this mountain is even bigger than Everest, and seeing this mountain in person is even better than looking at it on the pages of books or on screens. Another little greeting from the world to the little child in the form of a bright blue butterfly crossed the sky and flew past the white creature. Like a little child, the little creature begins to run after the butterfly, happily trying to catch it in its tiny hands. He was about to catch it and almost reached for the insect when thunder rolled through the sky and everything was covered in darkness, scaring the young Royce to death. The sky was covered with dark blue and black storm clouds, and thunder and lightning began to roar, warning of the onset of bad weather. Just when you thought you were having a good life, Royce was struck by lightning from the sky, and he was so contorted with pain that he was crippled because lightning is no joke. The kid has barely recovered from such a blow and is trying to catch his breath after being brutally hit in the head by the thunderbolt Perun. This time, the father reacted to his child too late, but he hurries to his son to at least give him first aid after such stress. Our song is good and new. Let's start it again. It's bullshit to say that lightning doesn't strike in the same place when it hits the poor Royce in the head again. Finally, Royce began to realize that the author really wanted his character to at least go to heaven. And here you go again, as lightning hits him, setting him on fire for the third time and giving the little dragon a terrible concussion for the third time. Now, he finally believes that the author of the manhwa will do everything to kill him. Genrock cries dramatically over his unconscious little son. He wakes up again in his room and sees the ceiling and the canopy above his head. Well, at least he is alive this time, and this is something to be thankful for. Biting his tail, little Royce realizes that he almost died again and goes into a very strong shock from what is happening to him here. It cannot seem adequate or possible that in a few seconds, lightning struck him as many as 3 times in one place as it did. Royce is being dramatic, claiming that the plot of manhwa definitely wants him to die the worst possible death that the sadistic brain has in store for him. But he cannot understand why he has to die so early, and why such a difficult fate has been destined for him, and why he has to be the victim. One way or another, but before his death, at least 498 years old, it is said that he must die at the hands of the people who will come after him. Royce cannot believe that this quintessential horror began after he decided and declared that he was not going to die for nothing at all. Now little Royce begins to be hysterical because he realizes that he has to die just to get the plot of the manhwa to start as it should. But then he thought about how he had survived these almost 500 years and did not understand what the hell he could do all this time while the world was changing. He would have sat on his bed and thought sad thoughts, but you can't sit on your ass all the time and change your fate and save yourself. So, having gained strength and courage, Royce started to leave his room to meet what was waiting for him outside his room. It is true that sitting on your ass and just thinking about how unfair everything is and how bad it makes you feel is not an option, and you need to think about a plan. He simply has to do everything possible to protect himself from these numerous attempts on his life and at least try to change everything. So Royce kicks the door to the room where his father is now and loudly calls his dad to draw attention to himself. Seeing that his little boy, Genrock, has arrived, he is distracted from his work on his documents and turns his head to his son to ask what has happened here. Sitting down in front of his little son, the father asks what happened, and Royce asks if there is anything in this palace that can reliably protect him from attack. Dragon asks about something like a mechanism with 3 levels of protection, and Genrock says that they do have something, but it's too early for the kid to use it. To use this, he needs the power of attributes, something that distinguishes him from all other dragons, and many years of training to control it. You need to be able to tame such a force, and Royce is still very young. He should start training when he grows up, in a few hundred years at least. But Royce does not agree with this scenario and wants to start right now and does not want to wait until he's allowed to start training by age. The father is shocked that his little son is ready to start training, and Genrock cannot believe that his kid is ready to learn. Genrock tried to object to his little son and explained to him that Royce was too young to start learning because he was not even a year old. The dragon stretches his arms to his father and begins to persuade him, saying that this is not true, and no one said that it is too early for him to learn something, that he should not do this. The father explains that training usually starts after the dragon has its first hibernation, but the dragon can't refuse the son's sweet eyes, because what wouldn't you do for such a cute little creature? And he changes his mind about the decision. Unable to resist the sweet face of his son, Genrock finally agrees to the child's request and is ready to give him what he wants so badly. The kids can't help but be excited and need them to start training right now, and they are not going to back down from the fact that they have to start training now. Genrock says that first they have to go to a specific place, and the white dragon asks where exactly they need to go. The father solemnly emphasizes that every dragon cub must come to the elders to learn about the powers he possesses directly from them. The boy's head was spinning from the amount of information, and the fact that the so-called elders existed puzzled him. A second later, the baby was happily running across the palace courtyard and shouting to his daddy that he had many important questions for him. As always, joyful and friendly to his child, Genrock hugs the boy and asks what happened and what his little white-haired dragon wanted. The kid's question is absolutely logical, and Royce wonders how they are going to get to these elders if he hasn't even learned to fly yet. Genrock begins to transform into his true dragon form, and black and purple mana begins to swirl around him and says that it's an obvious question. And now the father tells his dear son that there is no other way but to fly through the air to get to his elders for initiation into dragons. For the kid, the real magic begins, and he covers his face when the dark magic begins to blind him. Instead of a father, a huge layer of black and purple energy appears in front of the little prince, and the energy swirls in front of the little boy's eyes. The little boy realizes that he is about to see the same true form of the dragon that he saw in the manhwa in his past life, and it cannot help but scare him. And indeed, there is a real huge dragon standing in front of him, looking almost exactly like the same Genrock from the comic book, but its eyes do not cry blood. It would be wrong not to say that the boy, seeing the true form of his father, began to rejoice because he saw a real dragon before his eyes. Genro immediately stretches out his paw to invite his son to fly with him, and this white owl is smaller than his own father's paw, which is very cute. With a very proud expression on his face, but also nervous, Royce begins to climb up Genrock's outstretched palm to sit on it before the flight. When the boy finally climbed up, his father asks him to hold on as tightly as possible, holding the boy in his strong palms before he flies into the sky. With a swift purple arrow, Genrock rose and flew over the fields and meadows in the palace to meet what awaited them outside the house. From such a sharp gust of air, the kid starts to choke, as flying through the air is a very new experience for him, and it is his first time. The father dragon, meanwhile, is gaining height and rising to even greater heights, gradually breaking away from the ground and soaring beyond the visible sky. The frightened child clings to his father's fingers, asking if they have to fly so high, hinting that he is very, very scared. Laughing, Genrock replies that this is not high enough, hinting that they still have a lot to do before they finally reach the elders. And like an arrow, a large black dragon crosses the sky, flying out of the atmosphere accessible to ordinary creatures, which explains why there was a hint of height. The white dragon thinks that if they continue to fly like this, they will probably be able to easily reach outer space, passing all the layers of the heavenly vault. Genrock tells his son that they are almost there, and the boy is surprised at how quickly his father was able to pull it off, so that they are almost at the elder's house. The location is outer space with the stars of the Milky Way against which stands a strange silver building, previously unknown to the eye, that looks like a flower. The white dragon, seeing such beauty, hangs with his jaw hanging open because he could not even imagine such a thing, and because everything here is so beautiful. Genrock says that it really looks very majestic, and explains to his son that this is the Holy of Holies, known as the true land of dragons, the core of their lives. The name of this shrine is no less majestic, and it is majestically called the City of the Silver Flower. One way or another, the dragons flew to their shrine, and Genrock lands at the entrance to the palace of the elders of the clan and the entire race of dragons. The white dragon recognizes that the palace of the Silver Flower City looks much bigger when you stand close to it, and it delights him. Returning to his human form, Genrock tells his son that it's time for them to go, calling his little son to go ahead and say hello to everyone. The two dragons, the big black dragon Genrock and the little white dragon Royce, walk forward to the circle where the elders of the entire dragon family are sitting. Sandra, as the head of the Council of 13 Dragon Elders, welcomes the guests and says that they have finally arrived, and it is clear that they have been waiting for the visit of their people. After bowing down, Genrock greets the elders, calling himself the son of Famous, and little Royce can't squeeze out anything more than a mumbled greeting. Barotis, one of the elders, is surprised to see the son of the same Generok, and says that the boy seems smarter and more polite than his own grandfather. Famous gags Barotis. Generok says hello to his father and tells him that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and Famous turns away. It's clear they don't get along. Elder Famous replies that 623 years have passed, and the last time they saw each other was when he brought his now wife Valentina to meet him. The grandfather begins to complain that if he had a grandson, he would have come personally, because he does not want to share his happiness with these old men. To which Generok replied that Royce was born a month ago, and they had come to the elders early, and this could not but irritate Famous, because his son was right. Finally, Grandpa Famous turns his attention to his little grandson and looks at him with a somewhat intense gaze, assessing the one his son has given birth to. It's hard not to look at someone who looks you in the eye with genuine delight, and in the eyes of a white dragon, you can see the bright delight in the purple eyes of a grandson. For a second, there is a mute pause between the gray-haired and life-beaten Famous and the little newborn gentle white dragon, while the blue dragon is in thought. In their repertoire, the kids look at their grandfather with love and great admiration in their violet eyes and immediately call him Grandpa. No matter how much Famous broke down and acted like an unbreakable old man beaten down by life, when he saw such a sweet grandson, his heart immediately melted with affection. Famous gladly calls himself his grandfather and is happy that he has such a wonderful little grandson and rejoices in this fact as if he were seeing God. The other elders laugh at him, saying that he is so happy about his grandson, and someone sane says that Famous has been waiting for his grandson to appear for a long time, and it is a sin to laugh. Sandra guessed that Royce had come to learn about his power and asked if it was too soon. Generok replies that he had explained it to him, but Royce was persistent. Famous begins to brag about how his grandson is gifted from birth like a true grandfather, and Sandra hints that he should shut his mouth. Famous continues to enjoy himself, even when Sandra says that Famous is just an old man who likes to show off and asks Royce to stand in the center for the ritual. The frightened white dragon turns to his father, and he tells him that nothing will happen, and he just needs to stand still in the center of the hall, and that's it. And the child stands in the center of the hall in front of the entire council of elders, who will evaluate and determine his talents and give him the attributes of magic. Even though he is nervous, Royce tries to appear cool to the last and not show the elders that he might be afraid of anything at all. When everyone was ready, Sandra said that it was time to start their meeting. The dragon elders raise their paws, which shine with colored light, depending on what attribute they represent for little Royce. All the dragons, including Grandpa Famous himself, are preparing to launch up a ray of colored light that should completely illuminate the white dragon. In the end, all the colored rays form a kind of rainbow spectrum that represents the physical realization of all the dragon's vital attributes. The young white dragon cannot contain his delight at what he sees with his own eyes and is sincerely overwhelmed by the display of strength that the elders show him. Sandra asks the child to close his eyes and name a friend who will walk hand in hand with him throughout his life, which means thinking wisely. The children listen to the order of the Golden Dragon Elder, close their eyes, and begin to concentrate on their inner feelings to understand everything. The white dragon begins to call out to the universe, while various amazing planets, sphere-like attributes of mana, are orbiting around it and burning. The tiny dragon itself glows from the inner strength it hides in itself, illuminating everything around it like the secrets of the sun among earthlings. When Sandra's eyes saw that the element of this little ladybug was the element of time and space, the elder gasped at the sight of such a rarity. Even the father himself, the majestic dragon Generok, cannot believe that his young son has become the owner of an outstanding ability of time so early, which is rare. Generok rejoices that he has a son so brilliant that at the age of just 1 month, he has been given the strongest of all the abilities that exist. Even Famous himself cannot understand what is happening now and is surprised that his grandson has such unique attributes of strength. Famous saw that Royce was given no more or less than the very attribute of power, and he was not surprised that his grandson, who had gained 2 powers, possessed it. Barotis is surprised that a dragon with 2 powers was born in their clan at once. He hasn't seen anything like this for a long time, and then he saw something strange in his hand. Sandra's mouth dropped open in amazement because little Royce had also gained spatial ability, 3 powers for him alone. In history, there were only 2 dragons with 3 attributes. The first dragon, King Kaidos, and the Rottweiler, whose monstrous dragon was consumed and cursed by a demon. This child will be the one who will start a new era in the world of dragons, and he has a lot of responsibility, so a lot will be expected of him. And again, the subtle and ephemeral white dragon holds the attribute of thoughts and reason in its hand, thus the fourth attribute to the whole rich set of young white Royce. All these blessings fly in the direction of little Royce, surrounding him from all sides with radiance and entering the body of the little creature as the very forces themselves. Even Generek himself was dazzled by the bright abilities his little boy demonstrated at the meeting of the elders. And the kid can only rejoice in the fact that he is recognized as the strongest dragon seen in the last millennia, and indeed, why should he cry at all? Having grabbed the attributes of gold in his hand, Royce begins to rejoice as if he had grabbed the most beautiful toys in the world. He would have been happy with how strong he was born when he noticed something wrong that made him feel quite uncomfortable in this position. The elders stared at him as if they were seeing the second coming of the first Dragon King, which could not but frighten the sensitive dragon child. Frightened by the fact that everyone is staring at him so intently, Royce begins to scream in a panic, asking why everyone is staring at him so uncomfortably. To be sure, this frightened even Generok himself as a true father, for whom his son is the true deity of all the existing deities in the world. And again, the kid is sulking in his room, this time because so many things have fallen on his unfortunate head that he does not know how to deal with it. Time, together with space, and power, together with the combination of mind and thought, are four rare, unnatural attributes that made the elders lose their minds. This is absolutely enough to throw the whole plot and balance of the manhwa to pieces. But will he have the strength to pull it off? The White Dragon has a theory that this combination of attributes is the true plot and tried to get rid of it by all possible means as an option. The little dragon does not understand why he was given such powers and why Royce is destined to die before he reaches the age of majority. This fact cannot but irritate little Royce, and he thinks that the situation is very unexpected, and he again begins to puzzle over it. But there is no way out, except from the coffin, and although his abilities are so strong that they cause problems, there is something very positive about them. The harder Royce works to develop his powers, the more chances he has to survive and change the plot of this manhwa by 180 degrees. He is not even the original Royce from Manhattan, and has all the memories of his past life, and knows everything that will happen in the future, and he has to survive. Magic, like spells, is associated with the manifestation of hidden magical powers that are inherent in your soul from the moment you are born, and you manifest them. And martial arts that combine magical attributes and interaction with the body are another driver of development, but it is not clear where to start. Or there is another plan, and that is to try to study them simultaneously with each other to maintain a balance between all these forces at the same time. The body of this mana-blessed dragon was born with the four strongest attributes, and so it can handle anything if it tries. That's why the young dragon wants to start his training right now without delaying any trifles. Just as he was about to start, his father walks into the room with a whole tray of treats for his little miracle, and it immediately catches the young dragon's attention. Training is training, and survival is survival, but lunch is supposed to be on schedule, and the father asks if his son is waiting and says it's time for lunch. Seeing a tray of delicacies in front of him, the little white dragon lights up with excitement and a healthy appetite for a child as he grows up. The blue amazing crystal is a legendary fruit crystal that contains crystalline water similar to ice and is called Ramus. Next is the stem of the Kitrogen as a miraculous healing elixir to maintain strength and develop the muscles in the neck that will contribute to his development as a dragon. The celestial pink and blue jellyfish is the elixir of the wind attribute and tastes like airy light cotton candy, a favorite treat for children in real time. And the king of this platter is the grouse heart, a spicy elixir that improves brain function. If an ordinary person ate all this, he or she would be torn to pieces by it. And for the dragon's body, it's just a way to take extra mana from attributes thanks to the dragon's sulfur that controls the circulation of mana throughout its body. Little Royce thought correctly that if he ate a lot, he would grow up faster, and he ate his lunch with both cheeks with appetite. The father, watching his son eat his portion, bursts out laughing at how comical it looks when a child chokes on his food. Looking lovingly at her son, Generok smiles, thinking how tired he must be after this eventful, difficult long day. Finally, the cub is snoring peacefully in his crib, hugging his first friend, a plush rabbit. Everything seems to be going well here. However, it should not be forgotten that the little dragon is subject to assassination attempts and is always at risk, regardless of the time of day, month of the year, or location. Therefore, the bed itself was no exception, and a ball of dark matter hovers over the sleeping boy, which clearly did not come to wish him a good night in the chorus. This devilish power is beginning to be personified in the form of a fork. Seriously, a fork that looks innocent enough as a dining set is not a weapon. But a fork can also become a big problem if it is used correctly in a strategy against your target. Therefore, the fork has a clear plan of action to stick into the floor near the kid's bed so that he stumbles and falls because this bastard is in the way. But the baby does not see this and continues to sleep peacefully in his crib without disturbing anyone, as his sleep is a sacred thing for him and everyone else. And again, the room plunges into night silence and darkness, allowing the white dragon to sleep peacefully, his last peaceful sleep at home. Morning came to these lands, and the palace with cool air, light sunlight, and the chirping of birds that broke the dark night with their wings. The white dragon wakes up not realizing when he fell asleep, because the last thing he remembers was eating in his room. The father's voice urges his son to go to the dining room and eat normally now that he is awake. The day has to start anyway, and everyone eats first. The kid quickly responds to his father's call and is about to get out of bed, not realizing that a real trap has been set for him. As expected by the otherworldly force that had placed the fork right in front of little Royce's bed, the white dragon stumbled and flew to the floor. And he flew down headlong like a garbage bag instead of living dragon flesh. The frightened Royce sees a fork stuck in the floor in front of him and wonders what kind of misfortune it was and what the hell this fork is doing here in the room. Taking the kitchen set in his hand, the white dragon realizes that something really tried to take his life with a fork, and he would have died such a stupid death. The dragon rightly thinks that the screenwriter decided to make a top 10 dumb deaths, and jokes that he could have come up with better when he sees the wrapped tail. The boy was minutes away from hysteria when he saw that his rabbit Toto was torn in half, and the threads of it were wrapped around his tail. Only this rabbit can be trusted by the little dragon, so he immediately goes to his father to have his favorite toy sewn up for him. Sewing up the unfortunate Toto, Genrock asks him affectionately if his son is really upset because he tore his favorite toy because his son Royce is crying. As a real father, he asks his son not to worry because his dad will fix everything, and nothing is impossible for Genrock. Some strange thing happened, and Royce wakes up in his crib again, as if nothing had happened at all. Something is clearly not right here because he doesn't remember. The last thing that the white dragon can remember doing was talking to his father, but something went wrong and everything went in a circle. Genrock's voice calls his son to dinner, and when he gets out of bed, he obediently follows his father's call and wonders when his bunny Toto was sewn up, but he goes anyway. No sooner has the white dragon entered the dining room than he tells his father that something very strange is happening, and he is worried. As usual, the very dramatic Genrock asks his son if he is in pain, seriously frightened by his only child's statement about some problems. The boy cannot say that something hurts, but his memories are vague, as he does not remember anything when he falls asleep, and later wakes up not knowing what happened. After listening to his son, the calm father says that this only means that his time has finally come, which shocks his son, who thought that it was time for him to die. The frightened Royce, imagining all the horrors that will be waiting for him, is scared to death and asks what time it is for him. His father explained that Royce's hibernation time was approaching, which meant that in order for the dragon to be considered an adult, he had to go through 2 full hibernation cycles. And since the little white dragon is approaching its very first hibernation, feeling this drowsy is absolutely normal for it. When he heard the information about hibernation, he seemed to resign himself, and now asks his daddy how many years such hibernation lasts so that he knows exactly what to expect. Genrock replies that he is about 100 years old, and the kids are surprised to hear that he will sleep for 100 years, and this does not please them at all. Everything fell on his head like a snow boulder in the mountains a few days ago when he learned that he would die at a young age, and now this damn hibernation for centuries. Now the frightened dragon realizes that now nothing will prevent those who encroach on his life from easily getting rid of his little one. The childish, hysterical reaction of the boy did not take long to show itself, and he immediately ran away, shouting that he did not want to go into this hibernation and began to rebel. Therefore, this little genius has a great plan to do everything to prevent this whole big hibernation from doing everything to keep from hibernating again. So now, with eyes burning, this stubborn little genius sat down at the table and is now inspired to spend the rest of his hibernation training his mind with training. It is necessary to think of everything to stay awake and not eat, because satiety dulls and disperses heat in the body, causing it to become drowsy. No baths, because they warm you up to drowsiness, no unnecessary movements, and no going to the bed, because he wants to lie down and go to sleep at the same time. The white dragon understands his strategy and has now dealt with all this, and now he has to think about other options and deal with them, no matter how hard you try. But in the end, without eating, sleeping, or even relaxing in the bath, you turn into a living, moving likeness of a dead man. He himself began to be thrown off balance by the stupid idea of avoiding all this for the sake of an illusory achievement in the form of complete ignorance of hibernation. His father, with his concern, is here and there and is concerned about his appearance and his ignoring of any meal, and now he can't run away from his dad. Genrock begins to persuade his son to eat at least a small spoonful, but the boy refuses to eat anything at all, and so decides to run away from his father. Although the father is used to his child's antics, he still can't accept some things and still gets upset when he sees his child having a tantrum because he refuses to eat. The boy can still hear his father's shouts, but in his room, he finally closes the door behind him and is happy to have escaped from what was close. He can't let his guard down until he finds a complete plan to stay awake as long as possible, and that's a big problem. The points on how to ignore sleep are perfect. Stand pinching your ass, don't wash yourself with cold water, and most importantly, no books, which Royce successfully failed. You can't go against the body, and a growing organism begins to fall asleep, no matter what psychological barriers it had previously set up. Nature is nature. However, he immediately slaps himself to wake up and declares that he has no right to fall asleep here and is absolutely forbidden to do so at all stages. He cannot fall asleep. Under no circumstances should he fall asleep, and he hears his father's voice in the back of his subconscious, echoing in him. The frightened kid immediately wakes up and screams in fright because he sees his father in front of him, but the last time he read a book, he didn't read at all, and then this. Smiling, Genrock asks his son how he slept. He did fall asleep, and it is clear that it was for a long time, judging by his father's reaction and how happy he is. It's not clean. The father reached out to stroke his little child, but he began to freak out that he had actually only closed his eyes for 1 minute. But Genrock just calmly listened to his child when he started to freak out, and when the hysteria was over, he congratulated his son on something important to the dragons. When the little white dragon asked what the hell kind of holiday he was being congratulated on, his father replied that it was his 100th birthday. 100 years ago, the room looks as usual, and nothing suggests any trouble for little Royce, and everything seems peaceful, and life is measured. A father comes into his young son's room to call him to the table for dinner and wants to check how the boy feels after the whole performance. He brought his son a half bowl of treats to eat and saw his little son sleeping on the floor in the middle of a pile of books around him. Genrock can't help but feel a wave of cuteness because his baby stretched out on the floor and fell asleep while reading books, and it's so cute. So, leaving aside his bowl of food, the father picks up his little son and takes him to a soft, warm crib to fall asleep. Genrock thinks that it would be better if the child actually ate elixirs before sleeping, but this phenomenon cannot be predicted, so let the child sleep. The father resigned himself to the fact that nothing can be done, so he wishes his son a good night's sleep and covers the little dragon with a blanket. Finally, after stroking his son's head with genuine affection, the father wishes him sweet dreams once again, promising that they will meet again. Genrock was sitting quietly in his office working when a strange rumble came out of the blue, and he was seriously concerned. Like any responsible parent, Dragon Sr. immediately panics when he hears any suspicious sounds from the baby's room, and it's suspicious. This means that you have to run and run to check on your baby's well-being. Oh, these frantic parents. Even the dragon is no exception. The father immediately ran to the sound from the room to see what had happened in his son's room and saw that the boy was sleeping peacefully under the rubble from the ceiling. With one hand, Genrock lifts a piece of the ceiling to free his son from under it, wondering if he was hurt by the collapse, but the white dragon only snores. It's a good thing that the father had enough brains to realize that this was no ordinary hack and that he had to look closely at what surrounded his child. It is clear that the bed leg could not have broken so easily because it is made of a solid piece of wood that is not easy to break. It all seems too suspicious to be considered a mere coincidence, and there is nothing left to do but take my son away from here. Over the past 10 years of hibernation, A series of very strange things have happened to Royce, hinting that something wants to take this baby's life. Then a fire would suddenly break out, threatening to burn the entire palace to the ground, along with a young gifted dragon for a mate. Something otherworldly and terrifying wants to get rid of little Royce, and for the father, it is too suspicious to be a simple coincidence. And even Generok himself had no idea why the hell this was happening to him, so his father tried to do everything he could to ensure his safety. Generok created defensive barriers without paying attention to the fact that his life expectancy would be significantly reduced, but when it comes to his son, it is the law. He would do anything for his son. He has spent the last 60 years protecting his son, and in total, he has been attacked only 4,120 times. That is how many times Royce's life was attempted, but it is not clear who needs it, since there are several races in the world that know about the existence of the dragon race. And none of them would have attempted his son's life, knowing that he was standing in the way and that only a race of dragons could compete, but they are all their own. To this day, Generok is still wondering whether all these attempts on his son's life were mere coincidences, and this question will never leave him alone. Another explosion, and no one will give you any peace in your life, and no one will give you a rest. And now this unexpected explosion in the hall is added to all the problems. But the one who opposes the son of the Black Dragon, Generok himself, will face the wrath of his father, who will not give him a chance to survive. The father is angry that the bastards dared to raise their weapons against his family and promises to lift them up on pitchforks, just like traitors are lifted up. Anyone who takes up arms against his family will be torn apart by the dragon of Generok himself, and even the royal guard will not be an exception. Therefore, the life of these bastards will not be long and will end right here in the palace of the Dragon King, who is not going to be ceremonious with them for a second. The time has come for them to pay in full for their sin of betrayal, and the only way out is to protect themselves from the magic of the strongest of the dragons, Generok, because he is their father. The attempts of an entire battalion of knights to attack him look like an attempt to run over a hedgehog by sitting on it with your bare ass, just as ineffective and stupid. One by one, the traitors begin to drown in a whirlpool of black and purple mana, gradually dissolving as if they had never existed at all, and this is a just punishment. This is what will happen to anyone who opposes Gennaro, let alone attempts to take a swipe at his dynasty, the most precious thing for any parent, the holy of holies of all. Although he is a kind and sensitive father to his son and his family, to the enemy he was, and will remain someone who would destroy his child for the sake of his child. Of the knights, Generok left only their armor. No bones, no flesh, no dust. Just empty armor like nutshells or beetle shells. Famous explains to his son that there is no escape from this, and that it is the fate of a genius that he will suffer all his life because of his unique strength. Elder Famous explained to his worried child that his grandson would face even more challenges in the future, and that the strong Royce would be able to cope with them, just as the legendary first Dragon King once did by his own example. The same fate is in store for little Dragon Royce. Generok worries whether his boy will be able to cope with it, wondering whether his son's talent and strength are so great that they want to take him away. But he is a father to protect his child from any harm, and he will not allow his little boy to disappear under any circumstances. Even if it is God himself, fate, or someone else who comes for his child, he will not allow anyone to take Royce away and will protect him to the last. And again, the present time. Royce's room. Everything looks calm and nothing promises any emergencies, and the little one is nowhere to be seen. And here he is. He stands by the mirror and studies his own reflection, curiously examining something that seems to have changed in his small body. The white dragon looks at himself and wonders if he has grown up by chance during all this time, because it seems to him that he fell asleep a little smaller than he is now. The child measures himself by drawing an imaginary line and compares what he remembers about his height with what he has now, and it seems that there are micro changes in him. And he starts to freak out because he's been sleeping around for 100 years doing nothing, and now he's hardly changed and hasn't even grown up. The boy felt as if he had just fallen asleep during the lessons, as if he were napping as usual, but in such a way that 100 years had passed that he could not believe it. He also managed to survive, strange as it may seem to think about it, but he does not know what the price for his father was for the survival of his little son for 100 years. First, there was an attempt on his life by the knights when the kid was just walking down the hallways. Then he was struck by lightning 3 times, and the fact that Royce survived this with minimal damage. Then there was the damned fork in the floor, which almost caused him to slit his throat if he hadn't fallen a little further away from the trap. He doesn't understand anything at all, although he thinks he's safe while he sleeps, which seems delusional. If only he knew what his father had done. The kid gets stuck in thoughts that can seriously break his brain with the complexity and intricacy of this whole plot in the universe of this manhwa. It doesn't matter to him, because he has survived, and this is the most important result of this game of survival in which he was drawn by the difficult fate of the dragon's genius. As a classic of the usual routine of a small growing dragon, a father enters the room and wakes the child up to get up and finally eat. Finally, Royce notices how exhausted his father looks and begins to think that he is overworked or has some health problems. The little white dragon remembered all the times he had caused problems for his father and was too naughty, that is, he was not such a wonderful son. And so from now on, Royce has a goal to become the best son for his father and will do everything possible to satisfy his best daddy. Starting now, Royce calls out to his father and invites him to eat with him and go with him to the dining room and sit at the table together like his beloved dad. Generok cannot help but be happy that his son invites him to share a meal with him and cannot refuse his little boy to eat with him. The kids run after their father, dancing and singing about how hungry they are and how happy they are that their dad went to the dining room with them. Without any complexes, Royce asks his father why he looks so bad, and he asks if everything is so bad, and hears that he is overworked because of his job. Sometime later, the little dragon is standing under a large tree in human form and is going to continue training in the open. The tree he is standing next to looks unusually large, with a majestic, elegant, velvety emerald crown, and looks up into the sky. Little Royce has grown so much that he can now fully use his human form and is training to use a wooden knight's sword. Not surprisingly, the gifted little dragon can't help but show skill in using a sword, even though the sword is just a wooden toy model. And the smoke that rises from the skillful use of the sword once again shows how strong a person this little dragon known as Royce is. Eventually, the young white dragon, who was very tired from the training, put down the knife blade because he was too tired from such an intense training session. The little aristocrat is tired and tries to catch his breath, covered in a profuse sweat from having swung his sword all this time with a sword. Therefore, he stood up calmly to rest and stands back calmly, and tries to rest from what he himself has put on his shoulders for the sake of his goal. But the voice calling out to the young master snaps him out of his calm thoughts, and the white-haired man turns to the call with a worried face. Someone brought him a towel through the air to wipe off his sweat, and he can barely drag it on his back to be at the young aristocrat's side. Taking the towel, Royce begins to complain that she has been carrying it for too long and could have done a simple task like this. The tired fairy, who has finally been removed from the towel, exhales when she is freed from the greenhouse on her head that has been pressing down on her with its weight all along. The fairy notices that Mr. Royce has already gotten used to his human body and adds that this is not surprising because her little master is a descendant of a majestic race of dragons. Drying himself with a towel, the young gentleman shows no such reaction other than pure dissatisfaction with something that is known only to his lordship, the master. Little Royce replies that the fairy has known him for more than 100 years and still calls him Mr., even though he asked her to stop doing so a long time ago. Finn, the name of this little maid fairy, cannot think of any alternatives because for her, Royce is her young master whom she must serve. For these fairies of light, serving dragons is one of the most honorable roles that can fall on their rather long lives, which must be spent somehow. Hearing the words that it is a great honor for fairies to serve dragons, little Royce smiles, realizing that the fairy of light Finn has not changed over the years. A lot of time has passed since the very first cycle of hibernation. And again, Royce's room, where he sits reading at the table and a box stands off to the side. Eventually, the little dragon notices the box placed in front of him and returns after hearing some kind of paranormal activity from it. There is no one in the room except him and that damn box, which, knowing the author's insane sadism, can contain everything from toys to a guillotine. Still, the white dragon approaches the box because he hears some strange sounds coming from it, which alarm him, and he intends to find out their source. The box begins to emit a kind of dark mana that should seriously scare anyone who would be brave enough to get too close to it. Eventually, a blonde fairy dressed as a maid bursts out of the box with a victorious cry, screaming that she almost suffocated in the box. It is not surprising that the little master was seriously frightened by such a throwing out by the fairy, because he had never seen such creatures in his life, and it was a new experience for him. It was bad enough that she almost suffocated in that gift box, but then she got a tail from a frightened little dragon on her face. What a game. The poor fairy was swatted away like some exotic cockroach and remained stenciled on the wall of the little dragon Prince Royce's room. But in the end, he was afraid, because he could have killed the little guest of the little dragon, can be excused to the child who saw it for the first time. He has never seen such a creature in his life, and seriously believes that the fairy is some kind of giant strange fly, with a surprisingly human face and tongue. Deciding to check whether this creature was moving, the dragon took a writing pen and began to poke at it as if it were a dead dog, and not a creature with intelligence. In the end, Royce raises the fairy on a stick like a piece of dog shit and looks at the unfortunate woman who hasn't even recovered from being hit on the head by the master's tail. The little gentleman asks her who she is, and this disrespect for her modest person really irritated her, which brought the unfortunate fairy out of her trance. The fairy begins to squirm on this pole like a frying pan, because who likes to be held by the skin, as if they were some kind of miserable kitten? The fairy greeted the holy dragon and said that her name was Finn, and she was the main fairy of the royal family of Starlight, and it was an honor to serve him. The fairy girl says that she will hope that she can bring him only joy, and hearing such a small one, falls into a real stupor from such statements. The fairy apologizes for her impudence and politely asks Mr. Dragon to let her go and let her get back on her feet and explain everything to him. After letting go of Finn, the dragon asks her what she meant when she told him about the same service and what it means to give him only joy in life. The fairy is preparing to explain everything to him and asks him to wait until she presents everything to him in detail, and it will win over the young master. Finally, after a bit of a struggle, Finn pulls off the box of fabric that had been covering something like a display case and is happy to present it. In order to surprise their holy majestic dragon, the clan of star fairies has been preparing and now presents him with 23 disguises. Fairies as a race have no gender, so the set includes both male and female costumes for the young master to play with her as he wants. The set has costumes for every taste, and the fairy can be dressed up in anything, even a demon. You can also become a deity as a human aristocrat if you have enough imagination. You can make the fairy whoever you want, as this is an elite set in a limited quantity. But there is something that is the greatest advantage of this set, that is the most valuable. And it's no secret that Finn, the star fairy from the royal family of star fairies, has a gorgeous figure, and any outfit will suit her. It seemed that Royce had already seen everything in his life, and here he was, offered to dress up a doll and play with it, as if he were a girl, and it was a dragon. So he asks Finn if she wants him to play with her, as if she were some kind of fairy without a hint of rights and intelligence in her head, and consider her a toy. The fairy immediately begins to suck up and says that, as she expected, this little dragon is very smart for his young age, which is no secret. She wanted to continue praising him when they grabbed her like a doll and dragged her somewhere, no matter how much she squirmed in the hands of this sadist. This little idiot knocks over the doll box in a hysterical fit and starts to act out and drags the unfortunate Finn with him to his father to ask what it is. A newborn dragon went to his father to find out about a strange gift that turned out to be a popular toy for dragons, and there are many fun things to do in this world. However, it is not humane to play with a living creature, and Royce asks to bring Finn back, but the fairy begins to beg to stay with him in the palace. Finn throws himself at Royce's feet and promises that he will do everything, including washing and cleaning, to stay with him in the palace until his death. In fact, becoming a dragon's friend is an honor for fairies since childhood and is a guaranteed path to success and career growth and a wonderful life. There is a legend that the first king of fairies was also a toy of the very first king of dragons, and that is why it is a great honor for her, and he left her. Finn is over 800 years old, and she knows much more than he does and has been helpful in many ways. Now, he wants to go back to studying. The peculiarity of Finn is that it has the power of space and stores things in a parallel dimension, so to some extent, it is a storage for him. And now the little fairy is carrying a huge book on her hump, from which her beloved Holy Master Dragon, who is both king and god, studies. Finn reads out that today's primary program consists of a course on mana separation and manifestation with an advanced course to follow, and he thanks Finn. Finn begins to set the table using the items she had previously stored in the interdimensional storage, and the little dragon recognizes her abilities. The white dragon says that it is very convenient and wants to learn this art himself as soon as possible, because it is clear that Finn has more influence on him than the maid. While Finn is pouring tea into cups, Royce continues reading the literature that the little maid has prepared for him. It is clear that the dragon loves to learn, but they will never allow him to eat properly or enjoy the evening outside the palace when he hears the sound of the damned thunder in the sky. Tiredly, the little aristocrat exhales, complaining that it was quiet for a couple of days, and now this madness is starting again, and puts the book aside. Without fear, the little boy gets up from the table to challenge the elements that dare to spoil his time again and threaten him. The element intends to remind the young dragon of that beautiful day when he was struck by lightning 3 times in a few seconds on the spot. Finn is both frightened and fascinated by how fearlessly her little master stands up to this element and can only enthusiastically support him. Her young master absorbs the lightning without any fear or emotion, as he has clearly grown up over the years of hibernation, as well as his magical potential. The lightning was absorbed by the magic crystal on the little genius's hand, thus saving his little master Royce from another lightning strike. The young white dragon can't help but be pleased that he was able to repel the attack of the element so easily, and only smiles confidently and enjoys his strength. The dragon with the purple eyes admits that lightning has struck him hundreds of times before, but this time it will be his turn and he will leave unharmed. Finn immediately recognized the stone of the mind, a tribute in the little master's hands, which he had seen on Royce's hand when he had absorbed the celestial element. According to the laws of mana flow, the strongest forces flow into weaker ones, and knowing this, he has a plan of action and knows how to work with crystals. Royce will fill this low-level crystal with lightning, and when it absorbs it, it will become an attribute of a medium-level mind element. Now the attribute of the mind in the form of a bracelet with a stone is ready, and the young magician cannot help but be happy that he managed to absorb this lightning. But Finn starts to panic again and warns her master about the danger that he will be struck by lightning again while he is admiring himself. Finally, this brooding little idiot came out of his own reverie and paid attention to what was happening right above his head and threatening him. Thankfully for Finn's warning, the white-haired aristocrat was able to immediately repel the lightning attack by creating a real mana force field around him. This has never happened before, and even Finn, who is experienced in magic, is stunned by the interdimensional curvature of matter. The young aristocrat is actually a bit irritated by Finn's boldness, and his expression shows that he is not very happy about it. The maid fairy can't help but admire her master when she notices that he instantly created a strong field of magic as if he had the power of the first level. The blonde fairy admits that even for such a dragon, blessed with heavenly mana, such results are extremely outstanding, and he is truly a genius. The fairy continues to dream that if she continues to serve such a majestic dragon, she will definitely reach the top as the first of her kind. As a young Royce thought, starting his studies with spatial methods was the best idea, and now he can block the encroachment on his life with this magic. According to his observations, the attribute of space will soon raise its level to the first level of proficiency, but the attributes of power and time are still at the 3rd level of mastery, and the powers of thought and mind are still stuck at the 5th level of mastery. The problem is that the young offspring deepened the study of the space attribute in order to survive, and this affected the rate of development of other attributes by slowing down. So this whole training process will take longer than he planned, but now he has hope that he will be able to survive the assassination attempts. So, full of motivation, the white dragon genius is ready to continue his studies, and he asks his faithful assistant Finn to get him another book, the next one on the list to read. Once again, the atmosphere in the dining room of the Dragon Palace is peaceful, and nothing suggests any major changes in the plot. Little Royce, eating a delicious lunch with both cheeks, asks his father where he needs to go now, not realizing that his father has to go on a serious mission. Genrock replies that he is heading to the city of the Silver Flower, as there are rumors that Elder Kurdak will resign in the near future. Royce asks if his father is talking about his grandfather, and Genrock replies that Kurdak is still an elder, and although he is an elderly dragon, it is not respectful to call him grandfather. The little dragon replies that all of his grandfather's friends are grandfathers, and unable to argue with his young son, Genrock agrees to the title. As little Royce is tearing up the meat, he says contemptuously that he will retire, and why would his father want to go to the city of the Silver Flower then? Modestly and somewhat shyly scratching the back of his head, Genrock replies that the fact is that Kurdak intends to transfer his seat in the parliament to Genrock. The little son starts praising his father, saying how cool he is, and Genrock replies that he can't do otherwise because he is his dad. Royce wasn't the only one who trained all the time, as his father had reached the highest level of zero mastery of the absolute element of mighty darkness. Not all dragons can master the zero level of skill, and his father did it at the age of 4,000 years, which is rare for their entire race. These achievements are enough to call him the final boss, and look up to his father as an example of dragon strength and power. In the original story of the Manhwa Genrock, the monstrous dragon that destroyed the entire continent had the attributes of darkness and demonism, just as in this variation. It is because of these two attributes that the whole body of Genrock acquired a distinct dark purple-black color, and in the comments, it was called the second coming of the demon. But this time, it won't happen again, because little Royce has been training for the last 150 years to ensure that the disaster doesn't happen this time. The hesitant father wants to tell him something, but cannot muster the courage to voice it to his little son, and continues to be nervous now. Tired of his father being so indecisive, Royce asks his father to stop pulling the cow's tail and finally say something. He is irritated. Genrock says that he will need to stay for a while in the city of the Silver Flower. This has caught the little dragon's attention, and he listens to his father. According to the rules, a parent who raises a cub is disqualified from running for the post of elder, but there is no better possessor of the attributes of darkness than Genrock himself. Previously, the process of transferring the position of elder took a rather long period of time, but Genrock managed to reduce this time to only 10 years. Hearing that his father might be gone for about 10 years, little Royce falls into something like apathy, and Genrock tries to calm his son down. But the kids do not intend to cry, because their father will be away and say that the time without their dad in the palace will pass quickly enough that he will not notice. Genrock was openly shocked by this reaction, and tries to say something, but his son says that he thought his father would be gone for 100 years, but he's only been gone for 10 years. The young aristocrat says that he has just started studying martial arts, and that everything should be fine, and he will not be in danger from now on. A peck on the cheek. Hearing this, and explaining that his little son had grown up and could now do without him, he sits and cries in the corner, dramatically hugging his knees. The young dragon wondered if his daddy had ever wondered if he would cry because his father would be away from home for a long time and did not understand tantrums. Royce also asks Genrock if he thought he would cry and beg him not to leave home at all, and the father simply asks if his son wants something tasty. A tearful Genrock asks his son to wait for him at the dining room table while he brings him something tasty to eat and leaves the room. The young aristocrat tells his father that he is no longer a little child, but he is still a child. The time has come for Genrock to leave for the city of the Silver Flower, and the father calls his son to say goodbye in the palace courtyard and gives him instructions. The father says that all the food and elixirs are in the fridge, as well as medicines in case of illness in the third drawer of Royce's drawer, and asks him to use them. My father was about to continue when an impatient Royce shouts that he understood everything and asks his father to fly because he's tired of repeating the same thing. The little dragon starts to freak out because his father is leaving for only 10 years and not for eternity, and the white-haired child shouts that he is no longer a child. However, for his father, he is still a child, and he gives him a bag with a single relic so that they can keep in touch with each other from a distance. This is a natural stone for communication, and his father has another copy of this stone, and as soon as Royce activates it, he and his father will instantly contact each other. After evaluating the stone, Royce comes to the conclusion that it looks quite expensive, and he is delighted with it. After racking his brain, Royce comes to the realization that this stone will allow him to communicate with his father even when he is in the city of the Silver Flower. When his son asked him about it, Genrock was shocked because he hadn't thought about it at all, and this is his main problem. Genrock admits that he has never thought of such a thing and has never tried a crystal at such a great distance, so it is a mystery to him. Royce is shocked. The white-haired man exhales with the realization that he thought his father was extremely smart, and he just threw that out in front of him. But no news is also good news, and Royce asks his father to finally fly, not to worry about him and to think only about his work. With a sigh, Genrock agrees, but finally asks his son to use everything in their treasury if he needs anything and not to be ashamed. Or if he gets bored, let him go to his dad's office, and most importantly, let him remember to eat right and take care of himself properly. The father flies away, telling his son that the street is dangerous and he shouldn't go too far. To be honest, Royce is not happy about the overprotection. Still, the child is grateful to his father for his care and outstanding generosity. He recalls how many times his father pulled him out of the shit, and even more so from the clutches of death. He will recall the care of a father who spent 100 years protecting his young son from all the deadly dangers that were on his way all this time. Therefore, it is completely understandable why Genrock is so worried about his son. But now, the kid can't help but be happy that he was left alone for a long enough period of time, and no one will buzz around his ear like flies. The kids started dancing happily, realizing that he was the only one here, and that the whole palace technically belonged to him and no one else on this perimeter. But it was not to be. If you want to make God laugh, tell him about your plans, and then everything went wrong. The young aristocrat hears desperate cries for help from the little fairy Finn, who is scared out of her wits and starts shouting. But this little fairy has been caught by those she was running from, and two dark, childish shadows hang over this sweet creature with sadistic smiles. No matter how much Finn begs to be left alone, she is a mere toy doll that can be broken in half for everyone except Mr. Royce himself. The unfortunate fairy was grabbed by children's hands who began to shout that they had finally caught her and were holding the little fairy so that she would not escape from their hands. These little bastards can't help but be happy that they have captured the fairy, and now the toy won't escape and laugh ominously while the unfortunate girl begs Royce for help. Little Finn keeps begging her master for help, hoping that her young master Royce will save her from these little devils. In the end, Royce takes his fairy away from these sadists, and thus saves them from playing with her in a rather cruel way. The little aristocrat asks these barbarian guests what they are doing in his palace. He is clearly not happy to see these two little devils in his palace. These two demonic shadows hang over the unfortunate white-haired man, warning him that once he repeats the fate of his fairy, and he has nowhere to run from them. The demons are just two twin children who come to play with Royce and jump right on top of him to cuddle with their buddy. They try to explain to Royce that his father has asked them for something, but it turns into a two-voice show where you can't make out anything. The tired Royce asks them to take turns speaking, as he does not understand their babbling at all. Now there are two with one brain for two. It is perfectly visible. Connie, as the older twin sister, explains that Royce's father flew to the city of the Silver Flower and asked them to look after him in his absence. The younger Khan adds that Genrock said that his father asked him to look after Royce and added that he was left at home all alone. That's how he helped his son. These two geniuses thought that he would be very sad alone, and remembering that they always had fun playing, they decided not to let him die of boredom. Royce asks them to finally shut up and bursts into fits of loud laughter. In a chorus, the two shout that their friend said a bad word because that's not the way to say things. The violators of its holy silence are small twin dragons from the neighboring peak, an extremely rare phenomenon that happens only once every 10,000 years. Little Royce was disturbed by the fact that he was not growing in strength at all, and so his father decided to bring them to his house so that they could play. Royce found their silver hair and chubby pink cheeks very cute, and they even played together for a while. But they started to come to their house too often and organize raves there, and Royce got really annoyed and tired of the two of them. Finally, he thought that he could practice alone in complete peace and quiet, but then this punishment fell on his head in the form of two barbarians. These two barbarians say that they came because Royce was very lonely, and they were so nice and wanted to play with him, and he was such a bastard to yell at them. Khan holds a black sword in his hand, which he says he brought here to play with Royce. What a toy. That's the harsh childhood of dragons. When Royce sees a kind of magical attribute in the form of a black sword, he falls into a stupor because it is a rather rare weapon in their world, and certainly not a toy. Without hesitation, Royce took the sword from his friend, making him bawl his eyes out as his precious tit was taken away from him. The white-haired man realizes that he is looking at a very rare weapon and how it could have ended up in children's hands. So in all seriousness, Royce asks Khan and Khan where the hell they got that sword. And for the first time, the two of them are silent, as if they had taken in water and don't speak. But they don't want to answer the question so easily and evade the question, trying to keep the secret of where they got the artifact from. The sword is not simple, as its handle shines with a bright purple space stone, which immediately attracts the attention of a young aristocrat and is interesting. Kang replies that he found this sword in his father's treasury and borrowed it, and little Connie shows off 2 swords, calling them toys that she also found. In all seriousness, Royce asks whether they asked Carlos, their father, for permission to take such artifacts from his treasury. He did not receive an answer, and looking at these 2 barbarians who cannot find an answer to this question, Royce realizes that they stole them from the treasury. A magic sword with a space stone embedded in it. The power in it is much stronger than the power in his body, and he is shocked. Suddenly, the stone caught fire in the hands of the young dragon, because this little prince possesses the element of space, and it surprised him a lot. Some kind of magical scheme lights up on the purple gem of space and attracts the attention of little Royce. The miracles continue. Inspecting the circuit, the aristocrat asks Finn if this thing has any function, and the fairy replies that the sword has lost its functionality due to damage to the circuit. She can't say for sure, but the level of magic is very high. But the secret of these swords is that they usually have a warehouse for travelers between spaces. And with such a complicated scheme as this sword, this space must be very large indeed. And with this story, Finn piques Royce's interest in the experiment. By doing so, the fairy ignited the excitement in the soul of the young dragon, and he smiles mysteriously, wondering if everything she said about the power of the sword is true. In this case, Royce is simply obliged to check it out here and now. The excitement of little Royce was also passed on to Kana and Khan, who are always in favor of the extras. The adventurer laughs, thinking that this sword must be a portal to a vault where artifacts and jewelry are most likely to be stored. The young aristocrat decided that all these jewels would belong to him, and the twins lying on the couches are very bored because they do not play with them. Unable to find something to do, let alone wait for their friend to finish his research, the 2 lie on the floor and want to play. Finally, when they were sick to death of waiting, Royce shouts out that he has finally finished the research, which they are frankly very happy about. Their friend thought that he had finally repaired the sword, and now the horde of these little barbarians needed him to activate and test it right now. The boy asks them to be quiet as he has to concentrate in order to pour his attributes of power into this sword, and there is no room for error. The sword begins to absorb the magical power of the person using it, and in a very intense turn, it begins to burn with a purple glow of space. After feeling the sword absorb all of his power, Royce recognizes that the weapon is consuming more power than he could have expected, which is not a good sign. The kid is interested in how precious things are hidden in the space that has been subjected to such a strong spell when it starts to shine with even brighter light. This unit begins to demonstrate supernatural activity and explodes in midair in a swirling dark purple tornado in front of the surprised dragon. Now Royce is seriously frightened and wonders what is happening, and thinks that what is unfolding before his eyes is the very secret hidden space. This dark vortex begins to suck in these foolish young experimenters who decided to challenge the power of space in this sword. Now Royce realized what he had done, but there was no turning back for him now, and there would be no turning back, since he had already crossed the line between the 2 worlds by activating the sword. A merry series of adventures began, and these young fools were about to be pulled right into the middle of the vortex between the 2 spaces, and now they will not go back. A bright purple light illuminated the hall, and these 3, along with the fairy, dissolved in its brilliant radiance, and there was no trace of these restless children. The new location for these little adventurers is now a snow cave covered with blue ice, and when you look at it, you can feel the cold on your own. Yes, our adventurers have been blown here, and now they have to survive in this blue ice-covered place. The adventure promises to be very fun for them. Indeed, these 3 were transported by magic to the space between the 2 worlds. What a surprise it will be when they see exactly where fate has brought them. Royce was the first to open his eyes and see where they are now, as the leader of this whole group who started this whole adventure with swords and spaces. Seeing that they were nowhere but in a space that looked like an ice cave with blue ice pillars, his eyes popped out of his head. But that's half the battle, and these little geniuses flew down like sacks of potatoes, and their loud screams could have broken the age-old ice of the cave with their tone. When these little barbarians land on the ice-covered ground, Can starts whining that his ass hurts, and Finn asks how they feel. After recovering from the fall, little Royce begins to wonder where they are now, because the place doesn't look like he expected it to. The icy blue cave silently answers this question with the cold glow of an age-old glacier, and only a fool would not realize where they are now. Seeing the cave in front of him, Royce is very surprised and freezes with a bewildered face when he sees that he is in such an interesting place. The crystal on the sword shone suspiciously, or rather, it burned as if it had been attacked by a fever, and for Royce, this was a warning sign because it was cracked. The crystal cracked right in front of him, and Royce barely managed to turn his face away from the shards of the broken crystal. All four of them, including the fairy Finn herself, are in a complete stupor because something that was most unpredictable for the three of them has happened and what they should do now. Khan, in the best traditions of the genre, begins to sob because Royce was such a scoundrel to break his sword. The young white dragon, who is seriously frightened, says that it seems that only the stone of the magical attribute broke, not the body of the sword itself, so there is no need to cry. And now, hearing this, Khan begins to cry because Royce broke his attribute stone, and now another tantrum begins. Realizing that there is no way to talk to this idiot, the white-haired man turns to Kanya and asks the girl who exactly this sword belonged to, and the girl thinks about it. After thinking about it for a while, Canny replies that this sword belonged to their great-grandmother, and Royce asks if the two's great-grandmother ever owned an element of space. But Connie replies that unfortunately, she knows nothing more about the history of this sword. So they fell into a trap, because if he had once wielded this sword, he would have been able to figure out what they should do next to solve this great trouble. Royce was pulled out of his thoughts when Finn called out to him, telling him that there was something he should look at right now, and that the dragon was distracted. Finn points to a small grotto with a sword in it, identical to the one Royce is holding, but strangely enough, it is completely intact. The fairy maid draws the little master's attention to the cracked sword hilt, and this also attracted the attention of the young adventurer, and he already guesses. So Royce asks Finn if this is not the final spatial point, but only magic that connects two different places through teleportation. Now the nobleman realized that he had been blinded by his greed for treasure and was overconfident, and now he curses himself for being so careless. Now panicked, Royce begins to walk in circles and think about what they should do, and finally goes to the left when Connie asks where he will go. Royce replies that he is looking for a way out of the cave and is trying to find out where they are and how to get out. His barbarian twin friends ran after him, shouting that they had to go with him because they were a team and would go to hell together. Now this cheerful group is heading out of the cave because one for all and all for one, even in the face of the most dangerous situation of all. In the best traditions of the genre, they find themselves in a dead end, and only an ice wall awaits them ahead, which they cannot pass through. But for Royce, there are no obstacles, because this genius sees the goal, and there are no obstacles for him. So now, he will tear down this damn ice wall. Gathering all the power of his magic in his hand, little Royce intends to demolish this ice wall in front of him with his fist and pass through the walls of the cave. The wall cracked under such pressure, and the violet glow filled the entire space, and now the way will be paved for them with the ease of magic. After performing this simple magic, Royce immediately runs away from the wall that is about to collapse on their heads. Suddenly, an overly bright light hit their eyes, blinding them to tears and preventing them from seeing the world in front of them. But there was no obstacle. The twins think that even a fiery hyena would be a reason for happiness, and they begin to rejoice because it has snowed and because it is cold, and Royce is surprised. The young descendant climbs up from the cave through the exit he had previously made, and the twins are interested in where their dear friend is going again. Royce hangs there with his mouth open, unable to say anything when he sees what is waiting for him outside the walls, and the twins question him about what he saw. Even Finn saw that her master was very much impressed by something and asked what exactly had happened and what was the nature of such a reaction from the dragon. It turned out that they had come to the territory where the legendary right fang of the earth is located, the twin brother of the left fang of the earth, which is located in its homeland. Kang starts asking what the right fang of the earth is, and Connie starts shouting that he is an idiot and it is the left fang of the earth, turning the conversation into a joke as usual. The right fang is a mountain located at the easternmost point of the winter continent, and this can only mean that they have reached the other side of the planet. Now, the young dragon himself confirms that they are up to their necks in shit and realizes that it's all because of his stupid curiosity, which led them to a dead end in ignorance. Therefore, the only way out for them is to climb up this damned snow-covered mountain, and there is no way out for them now. This is what happens because of ignorance. The world of Evan's name consists of 4 huge continents that represent the entire geography of this world, along with the sea of demons between them. These continents are successive and are known for the fact that their climate always remains stable throughout the year as one season. The spring continent is blessed with a temperate continental warm climate all the time, as a realm where everything is forever blooming and fragrant. There is no cold there. The summer continent as a realm of eternal heat that never ends, where the sun is hot all year round and a warm tropical climate reigns all the time. The autumnal continent was blessed with rich harvests due to the perfect balance of cool climate and sunshine and influenced the culture. And a winter continent where an eternal blizzard reigns, coupled with wind and eternal cold that made the land icy and barren forever. The lair of his father, Genrock, is located in the far west on the spring continent, next to the green mountain range of the left fang of the earth. And now they find themselves on the opposite side of the world on the winter continent, and what they now see is the right fang of the earth on the eastern edge of this planet. Now Royce begins to lose his mind, because for the first time, he does not know what to do in these circumstances, and his face is distorted in hysteria. Eventually, the boy breaks down into loud crying and starts to wail as he is hysterical, and the twins, along with Finn, think that Royce has lost his mind. It's a worn-out cliché that manhwa about rebirth in another world has a trope of running away from home, but in this case, it's clearly too much for the plot. The dragon had no intention of fleeing to the world outside the walls of the house, as he was already in danger, and outside the walls of the house it was 100 times greater. But there is a worse problem, because Royce realized that his father could start looking for him at any moment, and if his son disappeared, then Genrock would start genocide. And then the angry Generac will start the so-called second coming of the devil, because his little son disappeared. Problems have fallen on Royce's head like an avalanche, and now he will not know exactly what to do and what to expect from his father. And they are on the opposite side. However, he who seeks will always find a way out. And the young dragon had a good memory of his father giving him a stone for communication. Indeed, this stone was in his pocket, and he did not lose anything in the process of these races and travels between spaces, and now he has a new hope. But the white-haired man mentioned that the stone might not work at such a long distance between continents, and my father hinted that the distance would be a problem. Now, Royce asks Finn if they can cross the so-called Sea of Demons to get back home before they are found. Finn starts shouting and forbidding them to go there at all, as this adventure is very dangerous. The Sea of Demons is the legacy of an evil, darkest dragon who was consumed by dark magic, and it is a kind of barrier between the spring and winter continent. This ocean is avoided even by strong adult dragons, as the deep blue waters of the sea are home to the most terrifying creatures of the continent of Avan. Finn warns that despite the fact that her Royce has 3 attributes, he is still a child, and it is impossible to cross the sea at his age. For the first time, the little dragon agrees with someone and tells Finn that he should at least try to cross this border. Then, looking for an alternative, Royce asks Finn how long it would take them to get home across all the continents, and the fairy replies that it would take them 10 years on foot. The white-haired man thought about it, because 10 years sounds like if they started walking now, they could get back in 10 years before their parents returned. Without hesitation, Royce addresses them as pains in the ass, which attracts their attention, and they complain that he called them such words. Now the white-haired man tells the twins that they are in a situation where they are on the verge of life and death, and now they have to think about what to do. The boy draws their attention to the fact that they can see the right fang of the earth, and that they are in the far east of the planet, and it will take them 10 years to reach home. Kani, using logic for the first time ever, asks why they should walk if they can transform into dragons and fly away. Irritated, Royce reminds the 2 geniuses that he has not yet learned to transform into the form of a dragon, and asks if the 2 geniuses want him dead. They shout out loud whether he means to die, and a friend explains that he will not fly, and that the only way out for them is to walk like normal people for 10 years. Now Khan asks what will happen to them if they fail to return home in 10 years. With a dark expression on her face, Royce replies that if their parents returned home in 10 years and they were not home by then, she would be in trouble. The frightened twins ask what will happen to them if their parents do not find them at home. Then, as a leader, Royce replies that their fathers will turn the continents into ashes and a sea of flames when they try to find their children. But such a performance did not work on these 2, and they could not be penetrated by such pathetic threats. Connie asks what the problem is with the fact that their parents won't find them at home, and that world genocide is not a good reason for her or Khan to panic. Royce has put out of his mind the fact that they are not human and has a backup plan of action, and begins to tell the twins that their parents will scold them for such pranks. Now, their friend scares them by saying that their parents won't buy them sweets and new toys for 100 years, and it really scared these two little barbarians. The white-haired man is shocked that the risk of being left without sweets and toys scared them much more than the possibility of genocide and the destruction of this continent. So they have to go home before his parents do, and as the eldest, Royce says that now they have to listen to him and do whatever he says. County starts shouting that she should be older, and Khan picks up on this note, and now they both want to be older than their friend Royce because how could they not? He willfully stated that only the smartest person can be a leader, and he teasingly asked whether these two consider themselves smarter than him. The twins shout in unison that Royce is still smaller than them, and shout that he is the youngest here. What stubborn sheep these two little white rams are. Royce, having lost his patience, shouts that he is taller than these two snot-nosed kids, and that calling them snot-nosed provoked these two little barbarians. Yes, they are older, but only by a couple of months, and it's nonsense. And he was the first to say that he would be the main one, because it's his role, and the twins think he's a child. The fairy is watching all this, and sees how the three began to fight, and their bodies mixed into one big mass, and they are ready to tear each other's eyes out right now. Finn exhales in despair and realizes that they all have a very long way to go. And then there is this ice mountain, this cursed mountain range, the ice fang of the earth, which has become an obstacle for them to overcome during these long 10 years of travel. The decision. The leader of the expedition will be Royce, the assistant of the fairy Finn, and the heavy load will be a pair of twins who are really a pain in the ass for the young dragon. The two twins are not satisfied with their role, as Royce again considers himself the smartest in the world. Now that everything has been decided, and they have agreed on their roles, and are ready to go as a commander, Generok's son gives them the order to start the journey, and the twins agree. But something puzzled Royce, who again felt something in the air that could not help but alarm him. The boy reaches for the bracelet with the attribute stone, and thinks that he has just thought that everything was suspiciously quiet around them all. The two hugged little Royce, asked if he was going to play with lightning again, and added that they wanted to be struck by lightning. You wouldn't know it at first glance, but these two have the attribute of mind and thoughts, and now the guy sadistically thinks that lightning strikes will do them good. Therefore, the white-haired man agreed only to get rid of these two annoying children. This time, the sky looks even darker, and the clouds even more formidable than they had imagined before. So now, embracing each other, the two are begging their friend to finally strike the mountain with lightning. Life teaches neither of them anything. So, without hesitation, little Royce beats up his friends, who encourage him to do such foolishness, to the accompaniment of laughter. But, after the shot, what they expected didn't happen, and all three of them hang in a complete stupor because the lightning didn't hit them in the head. The little dragon doesn't understand what went wrong, and thinks that the lightning did not hit the target, and he has never seen anything like it before. The Thunderer's attention is drawn to some strange sounds from the side, and he turns his head to the source of the noise. And then he realized what natural elements he had provoked with his release of magic. They were in deep shit again because of his recklessness. Just as he thought and feared, his stroke triggered an avalanche, and furious at the stupid way his friends treated the danger, he runs away. The fact that the avalanche is about to bury them alive is just so unpleasant for these little idiots. Enraged by this carelessness on the part of his friends, Royce shouts that they are idiots, and that because of their infantilism, they will now freeze to death in the mountains to the east. In any case, the company should take up arms and run away from what is coming at them. The avalanche was not going to let them go so easily, and the two had to be dragged by the skin of their teeth away from the dangerous cliff where they could have remained forever. Suddenly, Royce's entire face was contorted by a grimace of fear at what he saw in front of him, and now the clock was ticking down to seconds. Finn, as the voice of reason, begins to scream, warning his young master of the danger that is now heading straight for their course, saving the lives of the entire expedition. Once again, seeing that they are in a complete mess, the young dragon has no choice but to activate the space attribute, which is a native element for him. By creating a so-called shield around them, the dragon protects the frivolous twins and himself, and uses the separation to repel the attack. And they flew like shit cans, screaming loudly in the air, because flying in the air like a barrel while falling in the mountains is not comfortable. Poor Finn and her young master were so disgusted by this that few sane people would enjoy such extreme activity in the air. And the twins could use some henna, and they can only laugh out loud because everything is a game for these kids. Even the apocalypse would be fun for them. They didn't crash, and that's all. All this merry company ends up falling right into the cold snow, landing softly in a soft snowball without any injuries. Royce and Finn are the first to emerge from their snowy captivity, unable to catch their breath after nearly suffocating to death under the thickness of the snow prison. Crawling out of the snow, Generok's son admits that he thought he would definitely go to the next world this time, but the twins are playing as usual and nothing is serious for them. When they break free from the snow, they shout how much fun they had and beg Royce to repeat the ride for them again. Life has taught these two nothing so far. It is not surprising that the leader of this group eventually began to lose control, and little Royce's patience eventually began to break down because of these downs. Unable to stand such stupidity on the part of the twins, the irritated boy took it upon himself to smack them on the head for being such idiots. The two barbarians immediately start laughing. Royce asks them when it will be time for them to grow up, but this kind of nonsense is out of line. Therefore, while inspecting the area, Royce asks Finn how far they were carried away by the avalanche, since when they were under the snow, it was impossible to see the entire area. Due to the avalanche, everything is covered with snow, and it is now an unrealistic task for the leader to figure out where they are, and then the twins' voices called out to him. For these two, it's a pool of snow. It's just games in their heads when they're really 3 layers away from home, and their parents can kick their asses for such an escape. Khan does not demonstrate that he possesses the attribute of reason and immediately dives into the snow as if he were some kind of wild animal. God, what a pain in the ass to deal with these idiots. Only Royce is annoyed by this arbitrariness because his sister is completely delighted to see it and wonders how his brother will have fun without her. We have to join in. Not having much of a self-preservation instinct, Connie desperately throws herself into the endless snow, diving for her idiot brother. Poor little Royce. It's better to just watch the twins' moronic excitement and never become a part of their somewhat irresponsible, stupid whims. Later, the annoying Connie disappears under the snow after her brother. It's a sad thing to say, but finally, Royce will have peace for the first time in a long time. This time, Generok's son is struggling to keep from shouting at his friends again, so he gathers his will in a fist and exhales before speaking. Still, irritated by the behavior of these spoiled little fools, he simply calmly but firmly asks them to stop fooling around and start walking. However, there was no answer, and it was absolutely quiet under the snow, and these idiots did not even raise their voices, so the irritated Royce started shouting at his friends. In hysterics, he begins to kick the ground until he falls through the snow, screaming to the fierce fright of his assistant, the fairy Finn. At the last minute, the child's hand manages to grab the fairy, and now the frightened Finn flies down with him, like Alice running down the hole after the white rabbit. Desperately scared, Royce begs Finn to help him and lift him up on her wings. But no matter how hard she tries, she can't fly because he's too heavy. And these two flew down, just like Alice and her friend the white rabbit, but they are a fairy and a dragon, and the cave is actually made of ice. With a screaming face, little Royce flew down the tunnel, unable to control his emotions from the sharp fall he had just experienced. The poor little dragon screamed and cursed in pain when his butt hit the ice-covered ground. Neither Royce nor Finn knows how to stop this cursed fall, so they fly down into the cave together, rapidly and together. There is nothing but the same damn cliff ahead, which cannot be avoided. Finn, as is her duty, warns Royce that they are in great danger. Looking down, the dragon sees below him the very cliff from which he is about to fly down in a cube, and he flies down like a sack of potatoes, and his whole life flashes before his eyes, just as a person sees his whole life before death. Now the young dragon dreams of what it would be like to have the ability to transform into the form of a dragon, and thus save himself from imminent death. This genius is saved from falling and breaking his nose on the age-old ice, or even worse, by some unknown force that grabbed the boy by the skin a second before. Salvation came from someone from whom it could not be expected, and on the one hand, he was grabbed by Connie in the form of a dragon, thus saving Royce from death. It turns out that Khan can be useful when he's not fooling around, and he catches a friend on the fly with his sister. At least now they're not fooling around. Unfortunate Royce, holding Finn in his hand, is shaking in the air as if he were not a person, but a doll stuffed with rags. But he was saved. Despite the fact that they are complete idiots, Kana and Kana have an advantage. They can transform into the form of a dragon. The twins would not be twins if they did not turn an almost tragic situation into a game, and, when he returned to human form, say that he had fun. Watching his friends, even such a proud dragon as the son of Generok cannot help but thank the twins for saving him from death. All is well. Royce is alive, but something is still troubling his mind. The location has changed too drastically for him to remember everything so easily, and now he has to figure out exactly where they are and what's going on. From the top of his experience and knowledge, Finn immediately realizes that this is not a natural cave, and that this corridor was created artificially. The young dragon admits that this is true, but who created this ice corridor remains an open question. After examining the place, Royce admits that although he is here for the first time, this place is familiar to him, but he cannot remember where. But he knows for sure that he has seen this location somewhere. Finn asks his master what they should do now, and the latter replies that they should first examine everything here to find the right way out of the cave. Our song is good and new. Let's start it again. And so the twins run off again, arguing about which of them saw the exit first. This kind of arbitrariness seriously pisses off the leader, and he reminds them that they shouldn't lag behind him and warns them that if they don't listen to him, there will be a lot of problems. However, the two barbarians eventually hover in front of something, and it quickly catches Royce's attention as the friends suddenly freeze in the middle of a run. The twins froze like deer in the headlights, looking into the distance of the dark tunnel and turning to the leader in fear. Connie was the first to raise her voice, asking her friend who the people were that she saw at the end of the corridor. It is clear that the girl noticed something that the others did not. After scratching the back of his head, Royce, who saw nothing at all, asks the girl what she is talking about, but sweat is already pouring down his face. They stood there like deer in the headlights until the corridor was filled with bright red light, as if someone had spilled a whole bathtub of blood. And here comes the surprise that awaits those who never listened to the leader. An army of ice dead emerged from one of the cave's secret grottos. The bright red eyes, gray skin covered with scabs and ice, and the eternal cold do not make you feel like this dead man just came out to greet guests. Unsurprisingly, Royce was seriously frightened, and such an acquaintance was not part of his plans. But finally, the twins won't run away anymore, and now even crazy people like them are calmly standing behind their leader, as it really looks scary. This living dead man, who came from the eternal ice of the cave of the Right Fang Mountain, brought with him a regiment of soldiers. Royce has never seen anything like this in his life, so it's understandable that the boy is hanging around asking what the hell came out of the caves. Even Finn is not competent here, so hiding behind her young master's shoulder, the fairy asks why there are so many of these creatures in one place, and she is scared. The army of the living frozen dead looks really scary, and it is clear why everyone has suddenly become not up to games, as they are still children who have gotten into another mess. The living dead man did not wait for the enemy to understand what and how, so with a menacing growl, the leader shows his men that they should follow his example. Khan, who has no special intelligence, asks his sister if people are like that, and Khan answers the fool that people never have red eyes. Royce finally realizes what the nature of the creatures is, and the leader recognizes these living dead who now hang over them with a deadly cold. This creature and his henchmen are none other than the Ice General, who was forever walled up in ice caves in the bowels of the planet, waiting for his time. Long before the main events, legends about King Valencia, who was able to save the whole world from a great catastrophe and assure terrible end, were circulating among the people. Even after his death, his soul could not find peace because of the endless torture. And now his icemen have met him face to face again, and Royce wonders where they will lead him now. The young aristocrat realized that these ice warriors would lead him straight to the tomb of their heroic king, which they were protecting. Now the little son of Generok is happy because they have entered the king's tomb, and he cannot help but smile as joyfully as possible. Suddenly it dawned on him that if this was the exact tomb of the heroic king mentioned in the original Manhwa, then the object from the original Manhwa must be somewhere in the cave. Finn breaks his master out of his thoughts by urging him to pay attention to what is happening in the background. It is absolutely logical to think that the ice warriors are going to attack them because the living dead will not play quack with them. As the leader, Royce orders Kan and Kana to take their positions and prepare to attack, and they have already sharpened their swords in preparation for the battle. Without losing confidence, the leader smiles and gives the twins the order to get rid of these damn ice warriors and get them out of the way of the tomb. Finally, These hyperactive creatures have managed to occupy themselves, and, considering it a game, they no doubt enter the battle with joy, accepting the task given to them. Now you can see how skilled the twins are, especially Khan, who, when not fooling around, is a very useful partner in battle. Kang is a very agile swordsman and has a very high speed. The younger twin is going to attack first, without giving the enemy a chance. The boy demonstrates a fairly high level of sword skills, as he was able to match the strength and speed of an adult and an immortal warrior. The force of his blow was enough to make the cursed sword shatter into pieces from such a clear blow. Charged with the power of lightning, Khan's sword was enough to pierce both the weapon and cause numerous injuries to the warrior himself. The lightning passed through the body of the Ice Knight, so that his eyes lit up and his mouth glowed. From such a saturation of energy, the deceased burst into a cloud of snow. Keeping with the typical twin spirit of rivalry, Connie declares that this is not fair, and she was the first to choose this dead man to destroy. She would have continued to stand there and sulk at her brother, but when she sensed strange activity behind her, she turned around with a cold grimace and faced the enemy. It is quite dangerous to approach Kanya's back, and this icy asshole has just felt it firsthand and now repeated the fate of his fellow man. The girl is satisfied with her lightning attack and smilingly walks away from the spot where the enemy soldier has now exploded, leaving only flashes behind. Now, even Royce admits that the twins are pretty good fighters, watching them from the shadows. It turns out that they are not only able to play the fool, but also able to defeat warriors with second-level powers, even though they are children of the same age as the warrior, and that's great. So now Generok's son is confident that his twin friends will be able to cope with the ice soldiers on their own, and he may not interfere. Still, the white-haired man is ready to lend his assistance and use the time attribute to speed up the battle of his friends against the ice warriors. By the power of the law of time known as deceleration, Royce immediately slows down the enemy SII. This force, realized in the form of chains, immediately bound the arms and legs of the enemy soldiers, making their movement completely paralyzed by the force of the Royce chains. The warrior wanted to raise his axe and rush to attack, but he was so slowed down by the chains that he moved like a slug so slowly. The blade of the axe was subjected to such a powerful spell that now it feels in the hands of a warrior as if it were made of a piece of rock rather than metal. Khan notices that the enemies have become very slow and asks why, and Khan tells his brother that Royce has cast a time spell on the weapon. The younger twin brother is pleasantly surprised by this change and urges his sister to take up and end this fight here and now. And now, acting as a team, the twins are ready to stand up to the army of the dead, calling for the time to finally end them. The warrior was shocked to see two little devils rushing at him like a locomotive. Kanny, in full combat readiness, smashes these ice warriors to smithereens as she is imbued with fighting spirit. Kanya has a cold, sadistic smile on her face, and this little girl is in her element of battle. Kang keeps up with her older sister and destroys the enemy army with the same force. There was nothing left of the soldiers but a snowstorm, as the young man's forces destroyed almost the entire army. With an equally sadistic smile, Khan rejoices as he destroys the enemy, and they explode like mini-bombs. What a game of dragon cubs. Together, the twins are an extremely strong team, as they say. One head is good and two are always better. There is only one unkilled warrior left of the whole gang, and he is not a threat to them. And the last of the ice warriors was destroyed by two twins who acted in all seriousness. Connie is not inferior to his brother in perseverance and fighting strength. The last doppelganger was destroyed by these two, and now the twins can be proud of themselves. And again, the Baba who loves these two twins so much demonstrates what will happen to anyone who rebels against them. The only remnants of the enemy army were the remains of their armor and a light snow dust that rolled like smoke throughout the hall. Kang was disappointed that it was over so quickly and sad that the fun was over for him. Connie was also sad, exhaling that she was sorry that the fun was over so quickly and she really wanted to play some more. Strangely enough, this time Royce praises his friends for a job well done, which is very unlike him. The twins are surprised to hear their friends' praise. Once again, Royce's mind came up with some crazy idea, as the mind of this little genius can never live a minute in peace without something getting in the way. Now, Generok's son offers his hyperactive friends to play a more interesting game, knowing that by promising the twins a game, he can make them interested. Hearing the main word play, these two immediately became interested and hung up on the fact that they heard the most important word for them, the word game, and it is their favorite thing. As they say, a battle is a battle, and tea and food are on schedule, and young Mr. Finn is already setting a delicious table for Mr. Royce. Royce, in his best traditions, watches his friends fight while sipping his freshly brewed tea with a satisfied smile. Having tasted the delicious tea, the dragon asks Finn what kind of tea it is, which pleases the ego of his faithful maid Finn, who is always trying her best. Finn is happy that her master has praised her and smiles, blushing at the praise. Eventually, Finn notices what is happening in the background and is somewhat alarmed that her master has left his twins to fight the warriors alone. Before their eyes, the twins Connie and Con turn the ice army into a mountain of iron junk and snow dust with mad passion. Kang is on fire with excitement and how much he enjoys this kind of activity. Connie, in turn, admits that the task Royce has given them is very interesting and she can't get enough of it. As a true strategist, Royce tells his friends where and from which side the enemy is attacking them, and he shouts to Kana that arrows are flying at her from the right and warns her. There is no need to repeat it a second time, and Khan, hearing the order of his leader, Khan, lightning fast, breaks the arrow attack and leaves the battle dry. Now Royce warns Kanya that she will have to deflect the enemy's swing with her left sword, and she immediately deflects it with ease. The leader warns the team that a huge boulder is rolling toward them, and they should be careful if they don't want to be turned into meat. Working together as if they were the same pair of blades, the twins smash even a huge boulder flying at them to smithereens. The little dragons also report to Royce, boasting that they have completely cleared the territory and now nothing will move in their direction. Finn is pleasantly surprised that these two were able to destroy such a large army in a matter of minutes and pays tribute by recognizing that a baby dragon is still a dragon. After finishing his time, Royce stands up from the makeshift table, saying that the work was done perfectly and that all the tasks on this territory are finished for now. Clearing the table and dishes after her lord, Finn asks where they are now because she still doesn't know the location and needs to know where she's going. For a second, Royce froze, and to keep up the intrigue, he dragged his feet, finally saying that they were nowhere else but in the tomb of the heroic king. Finn can't believe what she has just heard, and clinging to the hero king, asks if Royce is referring to the same King Valencia from the stories of her ancestors. The son of Generok immediately confirmed her words, saying that this was the exact tomb where the heroic King Valens was buried, and they were honored. Tombs are built to protect the king's eternal rest from intruders who would have the audacity to enter them in order to desecrate and steal. It is a kind of underground fortification, with numerous traps and soldiers who were put in charge of keeping order. And after overcoming all these obstacles, you will be able to take possession of all the treasures that are hidden there and become the owner of all the artifacts. In addition, in the original story, this tomb was the main target of the red-haired protagonist and the place where he wanted to improve his skills. It's a kind of dungeon where you can get different elements to upgrade your strength for beginners and promises a good reward for completing tasks. The young adventurer is sincerely convinced that no one has ever been here before them and that they are the discoverers of the cave of the legendary hero, King Valencia. Thus, according to Royce's modestly ambitious dreams, all the treasures of the heroic king from the tomb will belong to him completely, and he has not been happy about it for a long time. The leader commands the twins that they are already at the goal and orders the other two to follow him and keep up, and they immediately take his order to action. Having agreed in general, they move forward through the long ice corridors toward their main goal. Before entering, the cheerful company freezes in complete delight as it is not every day that you see something like this, and the three children are completely delighted. Even Finn, from the height of her centuries of experience, she has been alive for 800 years, could not imagine that the cave would be so large. The kids, taught by the bitter experience of the last battle, start shouting that there is someone else up ahead, and they are so ugly. It's a good thing they decided to warn Royce. The leader of the group replies that everything is fine, and he sees these creatures in front of him, so there is nothing to worry about, and now they are prepared. Ahead is the so-called final boss, in the form of 10 ice generals, who are the main force protecting the gates of King Valencia's tomb from them. This time, the events of this deviation from the plot went hand in hand with the main plot of the original manhwa, read in a past life before death. And it turns out that, just as it was said, behind this door are the so-called treasures of the hero king. So it was time for the twins to sharpen their swords before the battle, and Royce wanted to ask them to prepare for the battle. There was no need to ask these two mini-machines to destroy enemies, and with a cold glint in their eyes, they are ready to crush zombies like parsley in soup. Silently to himself, Royce calls the dragon twins incredible, because they are not afraid of an enemy that is several times bigger and stronger than they are. The fact is that dragons are creatures that are already born to ascend to the top of the world immediately after they make their first flight. And now these seemingly two babies bared their sharp teeth, looking down at all the lower-class creatures under their feet. The leader reminds them that he promised them that their friends would not be bored, and they immediately understood what he was talking about. Immediately, the twin replies that they are having a lot of fun, and that Royce is the best. The two really got into their element. Then, since they are all having so much fun and are ready to do anything, it's time to destroy the rest of the ice generals defending the entrance to the Valencia cave. No matter how tall the ice general looks like a Viking in front of them, the bigger the cabinet, the louder it will fall, so there is really nothing to be afraid of. An ice-cold Viking zombie swings an axe at the twins, but it doesn't help him at all. But against these two small bolts of lightning, such a large mountain of frozen flesh is powerless and acts only as a punching bag. The ice giant can't help but be angry at the fact that he can't even harm his opponent with his own flimsy fighting technique. Royce is not going to stand aside, so he immediately decides to set the record straight and show the barbaric soldier where he belongs. The enemy will only be torn apart by a powerful explosion from the supernatural power of the explosion, especially from the son of Generok himself. Such a strong blow from the young dragon makes the zombie Viking tear up. In the end, all that remains is a heavy snowfall and a loud sound. Now the team is training together, and all three of them are a very strong team that can overcome anyone, even Satan himself, if they play as a team. Watching the team of three little dragons fight side by side, one cannot help but appreciate how well these three perform as a team. When the battle is over, the tired little dragons County and Ken stretch and say that it was a lot of fun, and now they will sleep well at night. Now that all the guards are behind them, Royce says it's time for them to look at the rewards that await them beyond the gates of the Dragon King Valencia's hideout. A huge ice gate in front of them begins to open, revealing a bright amber light that cannot but cause the three to feel excited. Canny is getting impatient, and the overwhelmed girl begs Royce to open the vault door as soon as possible. Con and his sister can't wait for their friend to open the door any longer and push him to open it for them. Excited, Royce says with a sly smile that since they are begging so much, he will open the door for them. When the children finally open the door, they are frozen with an expression of extreme surprise at what they see in the place they so coveted. Royce was not mistaken when he believed that there would be a lot of artifacts in this vault, and it is true that golden mountains of these artifacts lie before them. Little Kang immediately declares that there are much more treasures here than in his father's vault, and starts running around the golden mountains of the cave with burning eyes. Now Kang is going to repeat what he did in the snow, and accelerates to dive for gold just like he and his sister played in the snow before. For both Connie and Finn, such an abundance of gold causes a great wave of emotions, and they cannot hide their delight at such great wealth. Finn wants to draw the young master's attention to the golden mountains and asks Royce to look at such a large amount of gold. But the little master just passes by, seeing something that is much more important to him. Seeing something big, Royce hovers in front of this exhibit and his eyes sparkle with ice light from the mysterious depths of ice right in front of him. In front of him, in the depths of the ice, the legendary King Valencia himself sleeps an eternal sleep, forever chained in the age-old ice of the cave, right on his royal throne. The same king hero whose tomb the corridors defended by zombified ice generals led to. Finn immediately recognizes the legendary king in the ice and says that he looks as if he is alive, because the late king, who was really in the ice, seems to be sleeping. However, it is not the king's face that attracts Royce's attention, but something below the ice-covered king. Royce's attention is drawn to an ice tablet with some ancient writings carved on it. Royce immediately recognizes the ancient writings in the language of the ancient tribe of the Winter Continent, and the dragon begins to read what is written in these writings, and the first thing that is written is that in time immemorial, light and darkness appeared on the earth. Their second name was Good and Evil, which became the pillars on which the whole world will rest. When light and darkness mixed, chaos arose, and in the center of the chaos, there was a boundary between good and evil. It was named the Earth, and intelligent beings appeared. Good and evil declared themselves saints and demons and spent all their time fighting against each other, never paying attention to other living beings. The only thing they dreamed of was a selfish desire to have power over each other, and all living beings in the world suffered from the results of endless battles. In the end, people's patience broke down, and you took up your swords and went against good and evil, and dragons stood at their head and led all creatures. Living beings emerged victorious from this centuries-old battle and began to disperse across all 4 continents, where only one of the seasons reigns forever. But over time, people began to forget about the conflict between good and evil, and with it, the dragons that constantly keep order in this world. But he, Valencia Dominofis, wants to warn people that one day the dragons who sacrifice themselves for the sake of peace in their land will come out of the shadows again. Good and evil, along with their eternal struggle, will surely return and start a cycle of endless struggle. As the last generation to remember the battle, Eudaimona leaves everything she has and knows to her future children so that everyone knows the whole truth, and this is an important message. The king asks that his message be remembered, and Royce recalls the Battle of Eudaimon, which was mentioned in the original version of the manuscript. Immediately, the adventurer begins to rage at the author, wondering what else that damn sadistic bastard could have invented to make everyone's life more difficult with his inventions. But now something else is much more important, and this important thing is in front of his eyes. This is what he has been looking for so long, the legendary spellbook of the heroic king Valencia, which is finally almost in his hands. Valencia was the only hero in the world who was able to reach the 0 supreme level of power while in a human body. It's no exaggeration to say that thanks to the knowledge contained in the book, the main character of the original Manhwa, Kendrick became the most powerful man in the world. Therefore, this book is the most valuable of all the treasures in the tomb of the heroic King Valencia. However, this little greedy soul still has one plan in its clever childish head. It would be utter foolishness to leave here without taking at least a little gold from the king's treasury and replenishing your wealth. If you were the first to enter the tomb and beat all the soldiers guarding it, you have the right to take some, if not all, of what is there. Little Royce would have been collecting his treasures until something paranormal on the part of the supposedly sealed King Valencia began to show its activity. Oh no, the king's ice sarcophagus has begun to crack, and this is clearly not a good sign. Royce, not a fool, immediately notices and draws attention to the king's sarcophagus. Immediately, the little adventurer noticed that the sarcophagus was really cracking. Indeed, the sarcophagus, which had been untouched before the arrival of these two, began to crumble. And now, Valencia's sarcophagus exploded, almost blinding the little dragon. Now, the little boy cannot understand how this is possible, and what exactly caused the resurrection of the long-dead king. The legendary king has risen from the dead and, with his sword blade stuck in the ground, begins to stand before those who dare to disturb his eternal peace in the depths of the cave. Now there is no doubt that the legendary king has awakened and risen from the dead. The situation is shit since there was no such thing in the plot of the original Manhwa, and it's not clear what to do now. The king of Valencia, who is now driven by anger, declares that Royce dared to encroach on something that does not belong to him at all. Khan asks what it is, and the frightened Connie can't understand what is happening now. The leader himself does not know what to say, and says that it is none other than the hero King Valencia himself. The twins cannot believe that they are facing a real king who has risen from the dead. That's exactly right, and the fact is that the king had 0 strength during his lifetime, and they can't compete with him, and the twins can't believe in a person with that level of strength. Royce hints to his friends that they will have to use the forms of dragons, because there is no other way for him to avoid death. But suddenly, all 3 of them tensed up as the king threatened to attack them because Royce dared to encroach on the gold. Valencia urges that the punishment for their greed will be nothing less than certain death, and now there will be no chance for them to escape and save their asses. The force of the king's sword hitting the ground caused lightning to strike. So powerful are the legendary king's abilities. Royce realizes that the problem is that his body refuses to listen to him. For the first time ever, Royce falls into a state of hysteria because he is completely helpless in the face of danger. Connie, too, was frozen with fear and looked at the king in tears. Khan covered his head with his hands in fear to keep from crying from the strain. Royce quickly takes control of himself and asks himself if he has trained all this time in vain to be taken and destroyed without a chance. Therefore, it is time for the young dragon to show his extraordinary powers that he has been honing all these centuries. Therefore, not intending to give up and jeopardize his life, the young dragon is preparing to show the hero of Valencia that he is not a simple greedy man. Royce wants to live, and this desire is stronger than the strength of the hero king, so the dragon will not lose to him. Royce's mentality works in such a way that he sees the goal and does not see obstacles, and King Valencia is no exception to these rules. So the young man immediately strikes a strong blow right into the king's armor. Now, the little dragon thinks that he has succeeded, but it is too early to celebrate victory. It was too early to rejoice, as a strong flash of lightning broke the ground under the young dragon's feet. Now, there was no time for games. Once again, Finn throws the unfortunate fairy aside, hitting the wall as if she were just a fly. The ground was shattered by the impact, and now it is clear that the king's power split the soil, turning it into rocky gray ridges in the cave. One way or another, Finn survived, and now she has a new task, to find out if her little dragon masters survived such an Armageddon, and now she has to find them. Before Finn's eyes, the ground was broken in half, and now it was a rough, rocky landscape. When Finn saw the consequences of such a disaster, she burst into tears. Now, she and her beloved Mr. Royce are on opposite sides, and the little fairy begins to cry, believing that her master Royce is no longer alive. But the young dragon survived, and now thinks that it is the end of him, and mentally prepares to be buried alive in this cursed cave. The ice fragments just hit his face, and it felt like a simple tickle. To be honest, Royce was expecting to be torn to pieces, but again, he was spared. He cannot believe that he survived such a direct blow of zero force, let alone can stand on his feet and breathe and move calmly. And then Finn immediately flies up to him, hugging his little master, and begins to rejoice that Royce is alive, and the young dragon says that he is fine. Holding the sobbing Finn, who is grabbing his hair, at a distance, the dragon wonders why and how he managed to survive in the face of the inequality of power. Eventually, the situation forces Royce to pay attention to what is happening around him, and what he sees makes his eyes pop out of his head because it can't be. It's about the king of Valencia, namely, how great his power is and the extent of the destruction he has caused to this cave with his attacks. Therefore, Canny, who also managed to survive all this Armageddon, points to the faults in the cave and asks Royce to look at it immediately. In the wall, as well as throughout the cave, there is a fault that leaves no doubt that the legendary king himself is in front of them, from whom you can expect everything. Royce can't believe his eyes, because Valencia was able to cut through half of the cave with one punch, and now doubts began to creep into the young dragon's mind about the true nature of the creature before him. The young dragon can't believe that someone who has such a strong punch is even a human being. It's also hard to believe that at the last moment, Valencia decided to completely change the trajectory of his shot. The king once again took up his sword, and Royce was already expecting that Valencia, having arrived so close, would simply blow their heads off. But instead, Valencia simply throws his sword on the floor, as if he had been defeated in a fair fight. Then there are even more surprises, and Valencia falls to his knees in front of Royce and looks him straight in the eye, as if the little dragon had defeated him. The last words of the Hero King were that they were the young dragons he had to protect. But what to protect from and why to protect remains a mystery to the younger generation. Therefore, standing up and reaching out to the young dragons one last time, the king simply asks them to go on and be careful before they disintegrate into dust. Royce cannot understand what the king has just said to him because he is shocked that they have left here alive and unharmed. But an ice boulder overhead, about to break off and fly right at his head, forces them to accelerate their plans and thoughts. Finn immediately warns Royce that the royal tomb has begun to collapse and they need to get out of here as soon as possible or they will die. But some questions remain unresolved in the leader's mind and he wants to know the answer to them. With that, King Valencia finally disappeared and was scattered into fragments, which meant only that his soul was freed after he saw the young dragon. However, this does not make Royce feel any better, as he is left with a lot of unresolved issues in a cave that is about to collapse on their heads. Indeed, the wall begins to crumble, and Royce sees out of the corner of his eye that a chunk of ice has broken off the wall, leading to a squall that will bury them alive. Therefore, the panicked twins begin to sob, not knowing what to do without Royce by their side. The fact is that even though the situation is shit, it's too early for them to die, so we need to do it as soon as possible. Finally, Royce's transformation into a dragon is here, and now the mobility of these three will be higher due to the fact that they have all transformed. Now he shouts to his friends to immediately transform into their dragon form if they want to live normally, because this is no time to be naughty. Now that they are all transformed and ready to fly, Royce, as the true leader, leads everyone to the exit of the cave and asks them to keep up with him. As always, Finn acts as a kind of navigator, warning you if there are any obstacles on the way that you should avoid at all costs. This time, an ice crystal hits you right in the face, which can easily blow your head off if you ignore it at a crucial moment. Royce reacted immediately, and he always has a trump card in his pocket for that. Using the power of the split, he destroys a huge crystal boulder, saving not only his own life, but the lives of his entire team from the threat. The obstacle has been destroyed, and now we have to fly on before it's too late. But that's not all. And somehow you have to break through the freezing rain ahead of you. In its full power, Royce's own roar dispels obstacles. Now the way out of the cave has been cleared for them, and the trio of dragons will be able to fly out into the world. Eventually, tired, they fell down because of how hard the fight had been for them. Before landing, Royce assesses what would have happened to them if they hadn't flown out of the cave with the West. And yet he still doesn't understand what exactly happened there between them and the Hero King. The king clearly wanted to take their lives, but something stopped him at the last moment. It would not have been difficult for him to do so, and he woke up to get rid of the intruders in the cave. And the last words spoken by the king do not give Royce peace of mind, and the young dragon wonders what exactly the hero Valencia wanted to convey to them. But the main thing is not this. It is the fact that they survived the battle, and the fact that Royce got what he wanted so much, the legendary book of the power of King Valencia. Finn draws his young master's attention to the twins, hinting that they are clearly having a hard time. Indeed, these two are now crying for the first time ever, and complaining that they are tired and scared, and this is not surprising after what they experienced in the cave. So Royce generously decides that they should find a place in the lowlands where they can stop and have a proper rest after such an exhausting adventure. As soon as he gets close to the surface of the earth, the little dragon falls on his back in the snow and admits how tired he is of it all. The leader quickly notices that someone has started crying and cannot ignore it because it is his twin friends Connie and Kong who are crying. It doesn't look like them, so it's clear that they really got a big hit from Valencia and they just can't recover from the fright they got there. Although Royce was scared himself, his friends are still toddlers, so their fright must have been much stronger than his own. Not knowing how to show his care and compassion in any other way, the young dragon simply offers Kanya a grouse heart on his palm as a sign of reassurance. The leader urges them to stop drinking and drink an elixir that will restore mana because they are completely exhausted and helpless. Then they accept the offering from his hands without any further ado and drink the elixir, thanking their leader for his care for them without complaint. Royce himself admits how tired he has become of such activity since his reincarnation because he has put too much pressure on himself. And finally, they can have a normal rest after all that they have endured. The twins are still disoriented and frightened as they watch their leader collapse in the snow and feel entitled to settle down right next to him. That's why they only find peace of mind when they lie down in a heap in the snow and sleep peacefully after all the adventures they've had in the last couple of days. And Finn, as a faithful companion and servant, watches over the sleeping dragons, protecting their long-awaited sleep, which they so strongly deserved after all. So the whole night passed with the fairy watching the sleeping little heroes, protecting their happy long sleep. But when the morning came, as if nothing terrible had happened, the twins were running around with renewed vigor, rejoicing at how much snow had fallen around them. Royce doesn't understand why they are so happy about the snow when they have been seeing nothing else around them lately, and how they haven't gotten tired of it. Finn replies that after what they have all been through, it is wonderful that the twins have the strength and desire to enjoy something, even if it is as simple as the snow. The fact that they have so much strength and energy is a miracle. In the end, even though they are dragons, which is not immediately obvious, such energy is normal and healthy. Looking around, Royce admits that it was a good thing they got down the mountain since he didn't see a single house around, let alone a village, which is strange. The dragon asks if there are any monsters there, since they haven't met any, and Finn replies that there are a lot of them on the winter continent. Historically, due to the harsh climate, there has always been little food here, so hungry monsters occasionally attack people to get nutritious meat. Royce wonders why they haven't encountered any monsters yet, And the fact is that their strong aura is very noticeable, as the youngsters are quite strong. And precisely because they are so strong, no monster will dare to approach, and so Royce thinks that this power needs to be controlled somehow because it is suspicious. Royce would have stood there in thought until Khan called out to him, for he had apparently found something that might interest the young expedition leader. Khan pointed to the mountain range to indicate the rising smoke, clearly not from one or two sources. Smoke meant fire, and monsters don't make fire. The thought of discovering a settlement for the first time since the disaster lifted Royce's spirits. Taking the initiative, the twins followed him. 30 minutes later, Royce, who had been excited to find the village, was scared to death. The sight that opened before him shocked him. The scene that attracted attention was the bloody devastation, as houses were burning here and there, giving no hope that anyone had survived. Finn immediately realizes that someone has attacked the village, and the fairy is in deep shock. Now she is panicked and does not know what to do, and asks Mr. Royce if he knows what to do next. After some thought and gathering his strength, Royce replies that there may have been survivors, so it is necessary to search the village. The dead bodies of people were scattered around, mixed with the bodies of monsters. Looking at the lifeless village, Royce muttered that it was a monster attack. Royce explored the village in search of survivors, and Finn and the twins also went to look for those who managed to survive the massacre in the nooks and crannies of the village. The theory that they were attacked by monsters turned out to be absolutely true if you look at the fallen polar bear with its horn broken against the wall. Finn flew to her master to tell him what she had found, and immediately Royce asked his assistant if she had found any survivors. But the sad Finn replies that unfortunately, she has not found anyone who managed to survive the brutal massacre in the village, and this is very sad news. The twins also found nothing in the village, although they were so hopeful that they would find intelligent creatures in the village, and Connie whines that she is very hungry. Yes, but not like this. Royce recognizes that they have done a good job and throws elixirs to his friends in a manner that makes them feel like dogs, and they are just happy about it. But something did catch Royce's attention, and he thought he was going to get some rest after such a busy day. But it was not to be when he heard a strange sound. The fact is that a whole carriage with noblemen is heading in their direction, who went to the village as soon as they learned about what happened to their subjects in the village. So, he had to run as fast as he could, and with one hand, Royce grabbed Khan, who was eating quietly. With his other hand, he grabbed Canny, and now, with both little fools in his hands, they had to get out of the way of the carriages. Grabbing his young friends with both hands, Royce immediately runs behind one of the shacks to hide from unnecessary attention. Jerace quickly led the twins behind a sloping wooden plank where they could hide. In surprise, the twins tilted their heads in confusion. Canny asks why they are hiding, and if it is because they have faced some monsters that threaten them again. The leader replied that these monsters were not so scary, but the risk of death had suddenly increased several times, so they had to be careful. Hearing the unfamiliar word, risk of death, two people from the chest with one brain for two ask what it is and are ordered to hide their energy from people. Now, the little Royce is begging fate that the horse-drawn infantry of the nobles simply pass by them and not be noticed because they lacked the attention of the nobles. One of the knights intends to report to his superior what he has found while inspecting the village. The knight reports to the leader that the village was indeed attacked by monsters, and, unfortunately, they did not find any survivors. The infantry commander understood and promised to personally inform the Archduke himself. Just as the chief was about to report this to the Archduke, the latter declared that he intended to get out of the carriage and see for himself. Archduke Canberk gets out of his carriage to personally make a round of the village and see for himself the tragedy that had occurred in the village. Before leaving, the Archduke asks his wife if she is ready to come out and see for herself, but in her condition, such activity would be very undesirable. The woman firmly replies that as an archduchess, she has a duty to be the one who will rest the souls of those who suffered or died in their lands, and this is her credo. The Archduke did not argue with his wife and agreed with his wife's desire to see what had happened to their subjects with her own eyes. Therefore, the Archduchess gets out of the carriage with her husband, the Archduke, determined to see the dead and comfort their unfortunate souls. However, the situation is really terrible, and the picture of mutilated human bodies scattered around and the village rotting away awakened a panic attack in the Queen. Seeing the dead mother with her child knocked the Queen out of her senses, reminding her of what had happened to her earlier, and she almost fainted. Seeing that his wife was very ill, the Archduke immediately approached his falling wife, who was also frightened and pale. The woman replies that she is fine, but the Archduke hints that it would be better for her to return to the carriage before she falls down. However, a stubborn, red-haired woman asks her husband a provocative question whether he wants her to feel uncomfortable for hiding from everyone. Even such a formidable ruler cannot help but admit that in 10 years of marriage, he has not been able to curb the stubbornness of his beloved, beautiful wife. The beautiful Archduchess laughs, saying that usually the one who loses is the one who loves his beloved partner the most, and obviously, it is her beloved husband. The woman asks if there is really no one in the village who survived the massacre, and her guesses are confirmed by the fact that, unfortunately, there is no one alive. The infantry chief reports that according to the rules, at this time of year the monster's activity subsides, but for some unknown reason, they began to rampage and became bloodthirsty. Something seems suspicious to the infantry chief about the behavior of these monsters. The man realized that the monsters seemed to be pursued by something, and people just fell under their hand as accidental victims. The Archduke says that it is all his fault, and that if he had not sent all the young people of the kingdom to military training in the village, they would have been alive, and the Archduchess reassures him. Hearing this information about the provoked monsters, Royce immediately realizes that they were the reason why the monsters became savage, and all these people died from their aggression. Now the young dragon realizes that his conscience will definitely torture him because of what happened, because of them. They seemed to have no problems, and then one of the twins started roaring like a wild animal, which attracted the attention of the guards. Khan really has neither intelligence nor basic restraint, and he burped so hard from hunger that it sounded like the roar of an animal and caused a problem. The reaction of the guards was not long in coming, and they sharpened their spears, warning that if those who growled did not come out, they would attack them. Royce is furious because his friends are in trouble again because of their bad manners, and everything falls on his head like snow, and the guards need to leave. The infantry commander, holding his sword forward, emphasizes that the one who is hiding must immediately come out of his hiding place as long as he is alive. If those who are hiding there do not come out immediately, they may not hope for mercy and mercy. Royce immediately realized that they would not be able to hide for long and had to think of something, but he had no idea what to do. The swordsman hasn't gone anywhere and warns that everything the imaginary enemy does is at his own risk and discretion. The swordsman is tired of waiting for his opponent to come out and swings his sword towards the shack. And with this blow, the swordsman destroys the barricade behind which these little dragon children were hiding. Once again, the unfortunate Royce was hit in the face with boards, but it was clear that small children were hiding there. Finn flew off again and hit the wall like a fly that had been smashed with a slipper. And behind the barricades were not monsters, but only 3 small children who were hiding from the so-called danger. The infantry commander cannot believe what he saw before his eyes and is shocked that he had taken a swing at small children. And indeed, before their eyes, with their hands covering their faces, there are little children who, in their opinion, are orphans who survived the massacre. The heartfelt Archduchess immediately falls into a state of shock and laments the fate of the little orphans who managed to survive in such a hell on earth. That's right. This is a chance for them to get out of the problem and at least get some help in the middle of the eternal snows of the continent because they are really tired. Immediately, Royce decides to break down in tears and act out the scene of being scared and lost. But the stupid twins do not understand this plan at all. These 2 idiots don't take the hint and ask Royce what the hell he's doing. Therefore, it is necessary to show them directly and explain to them what to do. And the young dragon orders his friends to cry as well, so that they can pretend to be unfortunate orphans. Now they understand why, and they really have enough artistry. So immediately, the twins start crying, and the fact that they are identical twins makes the situation even more touching for people. Hearing the children sobbing as if they had lost their mother, the Archduchess immediately invited them into her arms to comfort the crying little children. The little children immediately throw themselves into the woman's arms and cry about how scared they are and how poor, unfortunate orphans without a mother they are. Royce wonders how these fools managed to pretend better than he did and thinks that maybe they are faking it too when they act like real fools. The Archduke approaches little Royce and cautiously asks the child if they are the only survivors of the village, trying not to scare the child. Immediately, the little dragon burst into tears and told the Archduke that they were indeed the only ones who survived this genocide in their village. The cold and hard-looking man gently strokes the child's head with his heavy hand and says that these little children have really been through a lot. The Archduchess suddenly called out to her husband, intending to ask him something important, and the blonde man with black eyebrows turns to the woman's voice. The Archduchess asks if they can take the two young children back to their estate to save the unfortunate orphans. The Archduke exhales, saying that they have no other choice and will have to take the children home with them. The aristocrat orders his infantry to prepare everything necessary to take the children with him, and this is his order that must be fulfilled in the end. The puzzled Royce asks if they really intend to take them to the estate with them, and he is not very happy about this news. At the same time, the knights took the little boy under both arms and dragged him, who was kicking, to the Archduke's carriage. While Royce was fighting off the guards, the twins were already captured, like teddy bears with him, and put into a carriage that quickly drove away. Finn could not do anything and just watched as her master and the respected twins were taken away by the carriage. However, the faithful assistant could not help but worry that she did not have time to intervene and help her dear friends, and is worried about it. Meanwhile, Royce and the twins find themselves in the palace's luxurious bathroom, and a luxurious new life should now seemingly begin for them. But it doesn't make him happy. The dragon doesn't understand how this happened, because he thought he could escape by playing on their pity. But the twins outplayed him, so they decided to take them with them. The young dragon could not have expected the Archduchess and her husband to be such wonderful people, and admits that he made a mistake in judgment. If you think about it, the situation turned out quite well and better than he could have expected. The twins don't care about Henna and just want to play, so they splash water on Royce, urging him to play another game with them. Before he could react, water flew right into his face. The twins start laughing at their friend, saying that his hair looks like he's a complete idiot. To be honest, Royce even envies them for being able to relax and not worry about anything in such scary situations. Just as he was about to calm down, he heard another voice squeakily declaring how beautiful these little children they were about to wash were. The young maids wail over the children, saying that they would like the children to call them their big sisters, and this noise is very annoying for little Royce. Finally, after several sessions of torture for Royce, the children were washed and dressed and brought to the table with the Archduchess herself to have lunch together. The children, who were really a bit ragged and dirty, were finally changed, and now these clean, handsome children are unrecognizable. The friendly Archduchess asks if the children are hungry and invites the little ones to finally sit down at the table and have lunch with her, smiling tenderly at the guests. As if they hadn't eaten in 100 years, the twins rush to the table, appreciating how much food is on the table and how well they play the role of orphans who have suffered. Now, hypothetically, the family is gathered and everyone begins to eat to the delight of the Archduchess herself, who warmly welcomed the orphans to her domain in a maternal way. Little Royce is surprised and annoyed at how quickly his friends have gotten used to their new roles. But the food is delicious, and the young dragon thinks they will still need to leave this palace soon and hopes that Finn will find their tracks as well. The dragon wonders where Finn is, and meanwhile, Finn is chasing through the forest looking for her master, following the tracks of the carriage as she must find him. And if the damned snow grouse hadn't gotten in her way, she would have found the trail much faster and been with her friends. So now she follows the carriage's trail with the clear intention of finding her master Royce at any cost to herself and others. So with a flash of light, Finn flies in the direction of his friends and will not retreat until he finds his dragon friends. Everyone is asleep, but only little Royce is awake, pacing the corridors of the palace looking for what would be very important information. Suddenly, when he passed through the door of the Archduke and Archduchess's bedroom, he heard a man saying that they could not keep children forever. This interested the inquisitive Royce, and he sneaked into a room in the palace and began to eavesdrop on the information that these two people had. The Archduchess understands everything perfectly well, but says that every time she looks at the children, she hears the voice of her late son Rin, and it hurts. And although the Archduke understands her feelings, he explains that it is wrong to keep their children just because they reminded her of their late young son. And the time has come to let go of Rin's soul, and the Archduchess begins to cry, accusing her husband of telling her mother to forget about her own child. It is impossible to forget your own child, and Royce immediately realizes that they have lost a child, and that is why they have been so kind to them. In hysterics, the woman grabs her husband's hand and begins to beg her Cant of all people to let her accept these children as her own and adopt them. Royce could not expect such a turn of events, and when he heard that the Archduchess wanted to adopt them, he fell into a serious stupor and became somewhat angry at this. Royce sits in the room assigned to him and plays with a wobbly chair. For him, this is a bit of a shock because these two have only known them for a couple of days and are already ready to become their adoptive parents, and this is completely serious. The Archduke of Canberg is one of the 4 rulers of the Winter Continent and is the most powerful among them all as a member of the royal family. Being the favorite child of such an important person means that he can instantly become a key figure in all political games and wield a lot of power. Even for the Archduchess, this is a very difficult decision as she suffers from the pain of losing her own child, and this is the driving force behind her decision to adopt orphans from the village. The best solution is to just leave before they interfere and cause more problems, but what I heard made my blood run cold. If only Finn were here, they could discuss everything together, as only this fairy could give advice to her dear master from the height of her experience. Suddenly, he heard something that attracted him from the window, and this sound snapped his friend out of his thoughts about what might have been there if his faithful maid Finn had been there. The wolf is spoken of, and Finn knocks on the window, who has somehow found her way to the palace and attacked the trail of her young master's carriage and found them. Finn has arrived. His sweet assistant Finn is the one he has been missing, and Royce happily welcomes the fairy with open arms, as he has been missing her help. Embracing the fairy, the young dragon asks where she has been for so long, and Finn tearfully apologizes to him, promising that it will not happen again. Royce asks her to stay strictly by his side, and not to leave, but to stay by his side no matter what, and she immediately agrees, loyal to her lord. The twins also see that Finn has finally returned to them, and congratulate the fairy on her return home, because they have missed her so much and are really helpless without her. Faithful Finn, in turn, congratulated the twins, and together they hugged happily, rejoicing that they were finally together again, as they had been before. Now that they are together again, it's time to continue their journey, and Finn is ready to continue the journey with her little dragon friends home. But there is a small problem with this that Royce has not yet voiced, and they will have to stay here for some more time before they can leave this palace. Finn asks if they can't just leave, and asks what happened, and why their plans have changed so abruptly. Royce explains that they are treated too well, and that the Archduke and his wife recently lost a child, and it would be very cruel of them to just disappear. Hearing this from his master, Finn is stunned to hear such shocking information from Royce, and cannot say anything. Now Royce excuses himself that they are in no hurry and can gather more information about the continent. Finn does not believe that the dragon is so sentimental about grief, but it is precisely because her master is so sensitive and kind that she actually wants to protect him even more and serve him faithfully throughout his life. Since he is very worried about the loss of the child by the archdukes, she offers her master a great idea that could help him in everything. Little Royce doesn't understand the idea, but he is interested in the proposal and asks Finn what she is talking about. Relations with other peoples have always been important to the dragon, and the pair of archdukes were the first representatives of another race to establish contact with them. The dragons don't understand what he's talking about and ask what's the point, and Finn replies that they have to give him a gift. If they don't have children, they need to be helped to have them, to which Royce replied that making children is not as easy as talking about it in words. But they don't have to wait until the baby is born, and if the Archduchess gets pregnant, she won't mind too much if they leave and tell Finn that it's a good idea. And now Royce is calling on his twin friends to play the role of the storks, that, according to legend, carry children to those who wish for it. Once again, the lonely Archduchess enjoys a cool morning in her palace and drinks tea in solitude. As always, the beautiful woman is sad, and in her beautiful eyes there is only sadness, and melancholy sadness, for something that neither she nor the gods can return to her in life. She would sit there sadly until she is distracted by a sound from behind her, and the queen, Melancholy, turns her attention to those who have decided to join her right now. The twins come running to her as if to their own mother, and immediately rush to hug the queen and ask her to play a game with them, and this makes the Archduchess almost cry. The Archduchess asks if her little ones are sad and invites the twins to taste delicious cookies with them, and the children immediately agree to this offer. Watching them, little Royce exhales with joy that he has gotten rid of those who were running under his feet and is ready to fulfill his part of the plan to create a new life. The little dragon entrusts part of the plan to the twins, trusting them completely and believing that the twins will never let him down. Now it's time for him to deal with the other people who have become part of his plan, and his main target is the Archduke himself, whom he will distract. The Archduke of Kant is busy planning an extremely important process of training soldiers, and it seems that nothing can distract him. However, little Royce has other plans for him, and he stands in front of Kant like a mushroom growing out of the ground after the rain. Immediately, the impenetrable Kant asks if something has happened and where Royce's friends are, and he replies that everything is fine and that his friends are playing with Kant's wife on the balcony. The harsh Archduke asks if the little boy is afraid of him, and Royce replies that there is no reason to be afraid of Kant. Kant admits to himself that children are usually very afraid of him, but the little boy in front of him is no ordinary child. Kant immediately compares Royce to his late son, Rena, and this causes longing and pain in Kant's heart, who also misses his beloved child. Kant admits that Royce reminds him of his late son and is the same extraordinary little boy who moves him to tears. Without hesitation, the man takes the young dragon in his arms, and ignoring his principles that he is a rock, he succumbs to the charms of a cute little boy. Kant is completely softened by such attention from the child and invites Royce to play with him, to which the little boy gladly agrees. Now Kant intends to show the boy his office and leaves, forgetting all about business and leaving the ministers wondering what happened to the Archduke. The ministers unanimously admit that they have not seen a smile on their sovereign's face for a long time and cannot help but be happy about it. Even they recognize the fact that the child in front of him is a real treasure that is rarer than the purest diamond. Now this cheerful little miracle is sitting there with a frown on its face, wondering what to do next. It's time to summarize the mission they started together. Royce asks the twins how the conversation with the Archduchess went. The twins report to the captain that everything was fine and that they and the Archduchess had tea together and had a great time, to be honest. Now the young dragon turns to the fairy and asks how she is doing with her reconnaissance mission, since she had the most important task of all. Finn reports that every morning the Archduke wakes up at 5 in the morning and immediately starts working, has lunch at 12 sharp, and finishes his work. Then he works out and most often prepares for bed for about 11 hours, and the average number of contacts with his wife is 5 times a day. The report is finished and Royce praises Finn for her work, but Connie has a question for him, and he reminds her that he is actually her commander. The older twin reports that they did everything he wanted, but they don't understand what it was all about, and don't understand how the birth of the child relates to the tea party. Royce again calls them children who do not understand anything, but Canny reminds them that he is actually younger than them, and that is not fair. So he asks them to listen carefully, and tells them that the couple is grieving for their lost child, and that in order to have a new child, they need to be close, and these two have almost no contact. When the Archduchess spends time with such lovely children, she will start smiling again, and this will greatly improve the overall atmosphere around them. The pain of losing a child will pass, and the couple will feel comfortable around each other again, and then harmony will be restored. And with it, a new story will begin to be created behind the walls of the bedroom and under the dome of the night. The naive twins do not understand why they should write stories and ask if it is better to write at night. And Royce replies that it is better for children not to know about such things. Now the young dragon holds a book with thousands of recipes for elixirs for all occasions. It's time to start the most important part of the plan and do the hardest part. Seeing this book of recipes with elixirs, Finn asks what it is and is interested in the curiosity of the young Mr. Royce. The dragon replied that he had found it in his father's study when he was studying ways to improve the effectiveness of elixirs and decided to keep it for his own purposes. Once, even Generok caught his son experimenting with elixirs, gave him a thrashing, and from then on locked his office forever. Now, the young dragon wonders if these titles will be useful to him to survive in this crazy world. Eventually, the right recipe to restore passion was found, and Royce hides in a secret closet, asking not to give away his location. And if someone asks about him, they will say that they have no idea where their little friend went and decide to use the magic of expansion to increase the space. With the magic of expansion, Royce creates enough space for himself in the closet. Now he thinks there will be enough space for him, and he can start working. Now it's time to get to work and make the elixir itself. Finally, when the elixir was ready, part of the plan fell on Finn's shoulders, and all that remained was to add it to the Archduchess's food. Looking around, the fairy checks to see if anyone is in the kitchen with her to continue her part of the plan. After making sure that she is the only one here, the fairy takes out a bottle of pink love elixir from her spatial pocket. The fairy has 2 such vials in her hands, and she recalls what Royce asked her to do before sending the fairy to the kitchen. The young dragon gave her the task of pouring the ingredients of these flasks onto the food that the Archduke and his wife would eat, and put them exactly there. Before sending the fairy on her mission, Royce firmly reminds her that only their food and no one else's will be allowed to eat, or there will be a disaster. But the order is stupid because it is impossible to understand what kind of food the Archduke and his wife will eat, so the plan is doomed. So Finn decides not to worry about this issue and just add the elixir to all the food in the kitchen without any extra calculations. Now, this hurricane is rushing through all the castle's vaults on wings. The bakers will definitely be baking bread, so the fairy intends to sprinkle even the grains that will be used to grind flour and knead bread. For a better effect, it is worth adding the elixir to water to make sure you don't miss it. Even this was not enough, so without hesitation, Finn sprays the elixir all over the kitchen with the help of the magic of distribution. Now, even the flour in the kitchen is infected with the elixir of love, and there is not a single product that is not touched by the dragon's magic. Finn is more satisfied with her work than ever before, and now she is proud of herself for completing the task Mr. Royce gave her with integrity, and it's time to report. Meanwhile, the young dragon wastes no time, and the next evening, he spies on the castle's inhabitants, or rather, on the queen herself. From memory, he found the door of the Archduke's bedroom with his wife, and if he did everything as he had ordered, the elixir should have already begun to work on the couple. Suddenly, he hears talk of something happening and thinks it's talk of the Archduchess on Kant. But it was the gossip of young maids that one of them was successful on the love front and would have a date. And this was not what he wanted to hear. The young espionage agent exhales with joy that he has gone unnoticed in the corridor and slipped past the maids. But there is no need to be distracted, and it's time to return to the main duty and make sure that everything happens between his sweet couple. So far, the subjects show no signs of special activity and stand silently against each other as if it were just a normal evening in their chambers. Kanta is the first to break the silence and raise his voice, though he just coughed, not knowing how to draw attention to himself. A man looks at his wife shyly, not knowing where to start a conversation with his wife. The red-haired woman sits calmly looking at the floor, not expecting the man to pay any attention to her. Though she is calm, her heart is beating much harder than usual today when she is with her beloved Kant. Suddenly, Kant puts his hand on his wife's shoulder, drawing the attention of his beloved, and she screamed with surprise. The X moment has come, and the same light comes on between them, which means that the elixir brewed by the dragon worked on them absolutely correctly. Kanta compliments his wife and says that today she looks extremely beautiful. This is a sign that the ice that fettered his heart has melted. Hearing such an unexpected compliment from her cold, aloof husband, the Archduchess blushed at the kind word addressed to her. Then everything is clear without words, and Kanta takes his beauty by the hand, and for the first time in a long time, something warm and special happens between them outside the bedroom walls. A pleased Royce promises that these two will have a truly special night, as magical as the power with which he brought these two icebound hearts together with an elixir. Suddenly, the twins came and asked what their friend was doing here and what kind of magic was going on, since they did not understand the intricacies of human love. Overly inquisitive children ask what exactly is going on there, needing to be told everything, because they are already completely grown up in their own minds. And again, Royce dragged these little idiots away, insisting that children should not know such things, and that they were squirming in his arms because it hurt. One way or another, his task was finally accomplished, and everything went as planned by the twins and Royce himself while preparing the elixir of love. In a good mood, accompanied by her faithful maids, the Archduchess rejoices at the beautiful weather today and adds that it has not been like this in their kingdom for a long time. But he immediately notices how her two maids are fussing around, looking for someone in the corridors of the palace, clearly in a state of alarm because of what happened in the palace. The Archduchess asks what happened this morning if the maids are so concerned about something so early and can't find a place to sit. The maid jumps up. The fact is that something happened that no one could have foreseen, and her dear children went AWOL, leaving the palace while they were still sleeping peacefully. One of the maids, a frightened young girl, tries to explain everything, but the Archduchess wants to know how it happened, that the children just disappeared. The tearful maid replies that she does not know exactly how it happened, because she came to the room in the morning and the children were gone, and the people who were sent to look for them have not yet been found. A maid with plum hair notices a letter on the nightstand and informs her mistress, who turns around in alarm at the mention of the letter. Betraying her hearty manner and respectful attitude, the woman immediately snatches the letter from the maid's hands to read the message she was left with as soon as possible. After reading it, she cannot believe what she is reading and how this can actually be true, and whether it is real or her consciousness has betrayed her. The children write that she might be very surprised by how suddenly they disappeared from the palace without saying anything about where they were going and without saying goodbye. But as you know, where there is a meeting, there is also a separation, and at the moment their paths have parted, although it is a shame to say that separation always hurts. They sincerely thank the couple for the care they have received and for all their kindness, and wish the couple to overcome the pain of losing their child in the future. They are also expecting a new addition to the royal couple's family and ask them to give the new life all the love and warmth that the couple gave them, and a sincere signature from Royce and the twins, who sincerely wish them all the best and hope that they will meet again in the future for the rest of their lives. The red-haired beauty clutches the letter to her chest and blames herself for the fact that the children knew about everything because she was so greedy and blamed her problems on them. But sincerely, she cannot understand what kind of new life these mysterious children are talking about in the letter and what exactly they mean by saying such things in the message. A few days later, the abbot announced that God's providence had been fulfilled and a new life had been born in the Archduchess's body, which could not but alarm the couple. When she heard about the new life, the lady was overjoyed because she could not believe that such a blessing would be sent to them again after years of suffering and loss. Even such a stern warrior as Kanta was moved by the news and took his beloved wife's hand to share this sensual moment of happiness with her. Suddenly, the woman remembered something, and it dawned on her where she had heard about new life, and that they should expect a new member of history to come into their lives. That's right. She read this in a letter left by little children who had been visiting them for quite a while and had predicted all this, which is so creepy. The red-haired girl screamed because everything was happening, just as it was written in the letter she had read before, and it could not but shock the beauty. Now it is clear what these children meant, and Kant says that these little sons felt that soon she would carry their own child under her heart. Crying, the Archduchess says that these children were sent to them by God from heaven, and Kant's strong, loving hand wipes the tears from his beloved wife's face, calming her. The royal couple is obliged to share the news with the entire country, so Kanta orders the warehouses to be opened and bread distributed to all the city's residents for the holiday. The warehouses with grain are open, and no one knows that the grain is not simple, but has at least one of the strongest magic brews in the world. Without delay, the bakers baked bread in such volumes that it would be enough for the whole kingdom, and there was confidence that everyone would know about the happiness in the ruler's family. The bread was successfully distributed to the happy citizens, who were sincerely happy that the family of such a wonderful archduke would finally have a long-awaited child. But no one knew that the bread was not simple, but carried miraculous power, and in the same year, a record birth rate was set in the Duchy of Canberg. The blessing has not spared the royal couple. They have a child of their own, and this gift is caused by a small mistake of a fairy that will create a great butterfly effect. But this is still a long way off. And at this time, Royce and his friends have already left the Grand Duchy, and their long journeys continue until they are home. Kanu really enjoyed the adventure they went on, and Connie picked up on her brother's note and asked to repeat the same tour in the future. Irritated, Royce reminded the twins that their journey would last at least 10 more years, and they would definitely have time to get bored with everything. These little fools are unbreakable, and they unanimously ask to extend the adventure for another 100 years, and Royce loses his temper, and poor Finn asks to hold on. They have already stayed in the duchy for a long time, but if such problems continue to occur, they will not return home soon. In order to get home faster, we need to find out how to cross all the continents as quickly as possible, and now, unfortunately, the company has no options. Canny asks if they will meet any more monsters on their way, and it is clear that the twins have not had enough adventures. Khan is confident that they will valiantly deal with each monster and assures Royce of this. Recalling Finn's words, he hints, explaining that there are 3 powerful dragons roaming the area, from which a strong mana can be heard from a kilometer away, and monsters do not dare to climb. The twins immediately start sniffing each other to see if they stink, but neither of them can smell a single odor from their own bodies. You don't have to worry about robbers either, because in such a place everything is so snowy, and they are in the palm of your hand, and there is nowhere for robbers to come from. With sarcasm, Royce asks if they expect the robbers to grow out of the ground like mushrooms after rain in the fall. Surprise, surprise. And out of the ground came the robbers, who turned out to be three armed young robbers from the forest who had been hiding underground all this time. These forest brothers could not let the children go so easily, and immediately put their weapons forward and ordered them to stand and empty their pockets. When the twins see the robbers in front of them, they rejoice, because the robbers really did come out of the ground as if on cue. Royce himself does not understand whether this is a joke or not, and does not believe that these three bandits from the highway were really underground. The gang's red-haired, one-eyed leader, noticing the small children in front of him, falls into a stupor, and he immediately kicked the asshole who decided it would be a good idea to attack defenseless children, even though they were in the forest. The redhead is furious because they were hungry and cold in the snow, and now the only thing they encountered were soaked, snot-nosed kids with no money and what to do now. A young man in a green hood decided to remedy the situation by saying that, judging by their clothes, these children were from a rich family and took them hostage. After a short thought, the red-haired man comes to the realization that the plan is not bad and is better than nothing at all. The one-eyed man says that it is better to take the snot-nosed kids hostage than to return to the lair empty-handed, and orders them to grab the children without hesitation. But the brave bandits from the highway are stopped by an unexpected appeal from Royce, who decided to cast his vote. This guy asks if the bandits think this situation is strange. The stupid bandits ask what exactly should seem strange in this situation, being very tense themselves. The dragon hints that there is a wilderness and three lonely children without adults, and that he would be surprised. The bandits ask if there are any adults here, and there really are none. If the adults are not present, the bandit asks why Royce asked them this question in the first place, and the child replies that he just gave them information to think about. Finn asks mentally what her little master is going to do, and he sarcastically replies that she, as his assistant, should know his plans perfectly well. The son of Generok never changes, and the main goal of the little dragon is to pocket everything that the bandits manage to loot, taking everything for themselves. The twins invite Royce to play with the robbers and offer to follow them to the place where they live. Royce wanted to tell his friends off again for their irresponsibility, thinking that they were talking outright nonsense, as they always did before. But he thinks that it might be a good idea to play along, since he wanted to rob them anyway, so why not rob their houses? The gang's one-eyed redhead orders his henchmen not to stand still, but to immediately grab the scum before they realize it and run away. The redhead expected the children to put on a show and cry, begging to be let go to their mother. But what happened next surprised the bandit. The children simply raised their hands in the air, surrendering to the mercy of their captors without making any noise, and the twins again do not understand him. It was Royce who raised his hands in the air. Royce says that they are surrendering and says that they can take them right now, right out of here, and they will not resist. The bandits, to put it mildly, could not expect such a plot twist and simply froze, looking at Royce as if he had horns growing on his head. The little dragon beats for pity simply by asking the bandits not to beat them and treat them well. Said and done, the robbers took the aristocratic children under their white arms and led them toward their lair, waiting to see how their leader would be pleased. The twins are happy to have some adventure on their way again, though not the monsters they dreamed of, but fish and chips are fine without fish, and chips are fine. Somewhat frightened by Royce's words that three small children in the middle of the forest should arouse suspicion, the robber in green follows them closely. Having at least a drop of common sense, the brunette asks the leader if these kids look really suspicious to him, but he doesn't understand what he's talking about. The brunette hints that those calm people are too calm, as if they were just out for a normal walk and not in danger or captured by bandits. The redhead is impenetrable and says that they just need to shake money out of their parents as a ransom or just sell the kids to slave owners and be done with it. Finally, the fattest of the bandits stops and declares that they have finally arrived, and little Royce's eyes are truly surprised by what he sees. The point is the monumentality of the gate leading to the bandits' lair, and it is a surprisingly rich place for an ordinary viper's den where marginalized people live. The twins will be happy to see your finger, and even the children who grew up in luxury are impressed by the monumentality of the building, because the facade is really very beautiful. The attentive Royce noted that he had only seen such material and facade in his father's estate, and could not believe that it was really a bandit's lair. A fat, good-natured gangster boasts that their house is really cool and that their boss built it all, and the white-haired guy asks who the gangster's boss is. If he were a simple soul, this fat man would have started talking about who their boss was. Overwhelmed with pride in his leader, he wanted to boast of such authority. He would have revealed this secret when he was hit on the head by the redhead for talking too much, so that the fat man stooped down. The redhead warns the fat man not to talk too much, because children can tell someone, and then prison and lice are guaranteed for life. The one-eyed man violently pushes the fat man, ordering him to lock the captured children in a dungeon and not to delay. The castle was closed, and the children were locked in a dungeon according to all the canons of kidnapping for ransom. Kids are really strange, and even when they are locked in a dungeon, they stand there calmly as if nothing extraordinary has happened to them and everything is fine. Now Royce turns to Finn and tells the fairy that she can come out of her hiding place. The poor fairy sat under Royce's shirt, and finally, when she was allowed to come out, Finn breathes a sigh of relief. Royce orders Finn to search the entire area for anything of value in the lair, and Finn immediately agrees to the task. Once again, the fairy flies out of the dungeon with an imperceptible light to do her work. It seems that these little barbarians do not realize that they are still sitting in the dungeon of the lair and complain to Royce that they are very bored and ask to leave. The leader coldly and firmly explains that they must first wait until Finn returns and promises that they will have time to play. Since this is a lair of bandits, it is guaranteed that there will be some precious treasures hidden here with which you can fill your pockets to the brim, and Royce is shaking with excitement. Meanwhile, in the depths of one of the lair's cellars, a red-haired dwarf is forging iron with a hammer, and according to stereotypes, dwarves are the best blacksmiths in existence. Under the strong arms of the dwarf, the iron is shattered, demonstrating the monstrous strength inherent in this strong body. A strong but very tall man for a dwarf continues his work with a hammer. A report reaches his ears that the gang has finally returned from the mission, and Favreau, the boss of the Bloody Axe Gang, turns to face his men. When the red-haired bandit bows to his boss, Favreau praises his men for their work and asks if they brought anything interesting with them. The one-eyed bandit excuses himself by saying that they did not bring any material values because monsters have been rampant lately, so there is not a living soul around. But they did bring something interesting with them, and they are 3 children, and judging by their clothes, they come from a fairly wealthy family, and this will be to their advantage. The red-haired bandit says that it will be possible to ask for a good ransom for these hostages, or simply sell the snot-nosed kids into slavery, and this makes Favreau laugh. Favreau says that the work was done perfectly and calls the children his bread and butter and says that he must go and see these kids personally. The one-eyed man agrees and lets the leader go to the children, who are lying down on the stone floor next to a bucket of water and sleeping as if everything is fine. But little Royce was awake, and he was the one who woke up first when he saw that someone very large and obviously authoritative was coming towards them. The one-eyed man has taken Favreau hostage, and the dwarf evaluates the prisoners, saying that they are too beautiful and can really fetch a lot of money. The young dragon was very impressed with Favreau's appearance, and admits that the bandit boss looks like a very cool man, just as he imagined. Favreau's strength can be estimated at the 3rd level or even more, and with such strength, he decided to become a robber, stepping on a slippery criminal path. Feeling that he is being studied, Favreau pays attention to the boy, as if a scanner is looking through him, without taking his eyes off Favreau's figure for a moment. Favreau is no fool, and immediately felt the strong dark mana exuded by these 3, especially the white-haired boy in front of him, whom he thought was just a rich brat. Such a leader makes the dragon shake. So much power is exuded by this baby dragon, and the red dwarf cannot believe what is happening before his eyes. Ross is also unable to understand why this man suddenly stood in a stupor in front of him and did not move, as if he saw a holy icon and not children. Having read Favreau's emotions and mana, the dragon begins to put together the puzzle and understands everything, once again confirming that everything is just as he thought about the boss. That's why the impudent little adventurer addresses Favreau as his giant uncle, and upon hearing such familiarity, the dwarf almost explodes with rage. When he asks, irritated, if he means him, he gets a defiant answer whether he sees anyone else here besides the 2 of them, a bold move on his part. Realizing that the man in his hands is a small manipulator, he asks the dwarf's name, addressing him simply as if they had known each other forever. The one-eyed henchman explodes at this familiarity, asking how Royce has the nerve to talk to the boss, but the boss himself meekly replies that his name is Favreau. The bandit can tell from the boss's tense face and mannerisms that he is not well and asks if Favreau is okay, since he has fallen so suddenly into a state of complete apathy. However, Favreau himself cannot answer what is wrong with him, but admits that he is not well, and the bandit was frightened that the boss fell ill unexpectedly. It's about a little devil who is happy to take control of Favreau and drive the gangster boss into his clever trap and subdue him. Tired and frightened, Favreau asks his henchmen to personally watch the children as he wants to go away and rest. Seeing that the dwarf is leaving with familiarity, Royce asks if he is leaving and mockingly bids his boss goodbye. He knows that he and his boss will meet again in this palace and smiles ominously at Favreau's reaction. A frightened, healthy man, hearing this from the dragon's son, immediately runs away like a child, and the red-haired henchman runs after him, not understanding what happened. Even the Finns, who had returned from reconnaissance, had no idea what had just happened here and why Favreau had turned away so quickly when he saw Royce. She accomplished her mission and reports back to her master, who asks what she managed to get during the reconnaissance. Finn reports that all the warehouses and rooms are empty, and there is almost no treasure or food, and the robbers are about to starve to death. Royce is not happy with this news, because he got into a shit that he can't pay off because of the poverty of these ignorant people. But still, people are also quite a valuable resource for him, as a well-trained army is worth the money and time invested in their education and training. Having lost the thread of coherence in her speech, the fairy asks what she is talking about and hears that it doesn't matter, and she is still good. The young dragon says that he will be out of the cage for a while and leaves the twins with Finn, who is not very happy about the prospect of being their nanny, to put it mildly. Finn begs to go with him, but is refused because if you leave the twins alone, they will definitely do something that you can't put on your head. He promises to be back soon. Seeing her fate as a toy in the hands of the twins, Finn meekly stays waiting, though she is afraid, but Royce's promise warms her heart with hope. What this frail little boy was going to do with the bars is a mystery, but only Favreau himself could have broken them. The enemy should not be underestimated, and little Royce easily bent the steel bars of the dungeon as if it were a plasticine toy. He was not locked up with the bandits, but the bandits were locked up with him, and when he came out of the dungeon, the boy said that it was time to start hunting for the so-called suckers. It's time to visit the giant who is hoping for a quiet rest in his room and is happy to be alone because he feels so good alone. Favreau wonders who the little boy he met in the dungeon is because he has never experienced anything like this in his life. He had the feeling that he was facing a monster that he would never overcome, and a treacherous chill walked through his body as if from a grave of damp stone. Favreau refuses to believe that he could have been wrapped around his finger by some small-time scoundrel. Dwarf thinks that his senses are somewhat dulled because he spent a lot of time sitting around doing nothing and not practicing. And then, out of the blue, this damned little bastard, who seems to have grown out of the ground, appears in his room and asks in a deathly tone what Favreau is thinking about. Holy moly, this child will give anyone a heart attack, and the dwarf jumped up on the spot in fright when he saw such a thing near him, and Royce just said hello. The main question that worries Favreau is how Royce got out of the dungeon, and the dragon answers that he just got out because he can. Hearing this, Favreau was stunned and had goosebumps the size of a herd of horses running down his back. Such audacity on the part of the young dragon scared Favreau into hysteria, and he swung his axe at Royce, begging him not to approach him. However, the kids were not frightened and simply appreciated the interior of Favreau's room, saying that it was not a bad room for a barbarian. Favreau has no idea how the prisoner managed to escape from the dungeon, but promises to turn a blind eye to his escape if Royce returns immediately. Royce immediately challenges him by asking what will happen if he doesn't come back. Dwarf replies that in this case, he will have no choice but to use force against him, no matter how much he wants to do it. The dragon begins to tease Favreau for being Royce, who is so stubborn he doesn't want to go back to prison, and sarcastically orders him to be beaten like a naughty dog. Favreau was irritated by this insolence and swung a hammer at him like an annoying fly. Favreau has swung too hard, and the timing of his attack is too tense, but it's too late to retreat, and the dragon doesn't care and stands there like a stone. In the giant's opinion, this boy is to blame for his own death and is ready to kill the child, but he freezes in place as if he had been spelled. Now Favreau does not understand why his hands suddenly stopped obeying, and he just stands there hanging like a fool because of this little demon. The demonic little rascal keeps teasing, asking if Favreau was going to hit him with that damn hammer. The dragon teases the giant that although he is big and strong, His mind is clearly not his strongest point. Once again, Favreau takes a swing at the impudent young boy standing in front of him with a demonic smile on his lips. And the little dragon stands there and enjoys the fact that he can so easily manipulate this huge, red man like a doll. Favreau keeps swinging the hammer over his head as if he's really ready to nail this damn blonde-haired child with demon eyes. But in the end, the tired Favreau fell to the ground with his own sword after he had so loudly declared that he would kill the damned scum himself. And again, this demon dragon teases the beaten Favreau, asking if this is all he can present to him in the arena today. Until now, Favreau cannot understand who this cursed child in front of him really is, having no idea who this mysterious little boy is. With a sadistic smile, Royce looks at Favreau, asking him a rhetorical question again, teasing the unfortunate man. The dragon replies that Favreau must know his true nature, since he can feel the young dragon's inhuman aura. But the redhead does not understand what he is talking about. Young Royce would have liked to continue his conversation with Favreau, but the voice of the unfortunate Finn interrupted their friendly conversation. The poor fairy came to tell us that the twins woke up and started to act out of boredom, and she couldn't help them, so she flew here. The unfortunate dwarf could not have expected such a feint with his ears in the form of a fairy, and even shouted out, asking if he was dreaming that he was seeing a real fairy. Finn immediately noticed a character so colorful that he seemed to be a dwarf, and yet not. So, flying closer, Finn begins to examine the giant's face, analyzing it. Something seemed so strange to the fairy, and she says it out loud because she had never seen anything like it in her life. He smells like a gnome, but his size makes Favreau look more like an orc, because gnomes are very small by nature. The young dragon replies that he is a dwarf, or even a hybrid, from the union of a human and a dwarf, and Finn asks how Favreau can be a dwarf with such a body. Royce cannot answer this question, but he admits that the very fact of Favreau's existence is incredible and cannot be argued with. Pausing in shock, the redhead asks how Royce knows that he is a half-breed dwarf, still having no idea who exactly is standing in front of him. Again, with a sadistic smile, Royce says that Favreau knows his true nature, and says that he has to strain his brain to realize it. And now the red-haired half-breed thought seriously about the dragon's words and began to recall everything he knew about all races of people. And then it dawned on him. Finally, he realized, and could not believe his eyes and feelings, because it could not be that he was standing in front of him. The memories of an evening Favreau spent with his father, a purebred dwarf who was a blacksmith like all dwarves and a red-headed man, came to life. The father intends to have a serious talk with his son and tells him that dwarves have one interesting feature. If one day he meets a creature that sends chills and shivers down his spine and his body stops obeying him, it means one thing. His father instructs little Favreau to run away from these creatures without looking back. The young Favreau didn't understand what his father was talking about, and he was asking what his father meant. Dad explains that his son is not half a dwarf, and that this may be his advantage over him. But as long as the blood of his dwarf father flows in Favreau's veins, he will not be able to escape the fate of an ordinary dwarf, so if he feels something like the described, he must flee. Little Favreau asks what will happen if he can't escape from the hypothetical danger that is lurking behind him. In this case, following the curse imposed on him, he will have to do what he is told by the one who enslaved him, and that is the dragon. The father reminds his son that he should not forget that the best solution in such a situation is to run away, and that he is not as stupid as all the dwarves.